Chapter 45. Feng Bujue continued to move down the tunnel. The scary scene from before did not affect him at all. He continued to move forward normally without any pressure. Soon, he reached the end of the tunnel. It was a small and damp cellar. It was not surprising that there was a prison door in the cellar, for in more remote times the cellars under such large houses were generally used as prisons for some evil purpose, and were now used as a place of rest for the dead. The floor and the walls of the corridor were carefully covered with copper, and the heavy iron door was extremely heavy. Once it was pushed open, the hinges would make an unusually ear-piercing squeak. There was a coffin placed in the middle of the cell. Using the flashlight several steps away, Chungu realized that the coffin lid was not nailed shut. In fact, it was not even closed properly. Feng Bujue pushed the door open and walked in. However, he was not in a hurry to open the coffin lid. Instead, he used the flashlight to search the surrounding walls. He found something. On one of the walls, he found another passage from the haunted palace. This time, it was written in blood. But the demon in the robe of sorrow killed the noble king. Let us mourn, the dawn will not descend upon him. The sorrow is unparalleled. The glory that shrouded his old home was like a flower in full bloom, but now it is a dark past, buried by time. So, it's the 5th paragraph, Feng Bujue said softly after reading it. The system announcement said, Side quest progress updated. The quest tab also changed. Find all 6 paragraphs of the haunted palace. Current progress, March 6. Feng Bujue walked to the coffin. With one hand holding the flashlight and the other holding a fist, he knocked on the coffin lid 3 times like he was knocking on a door. Hey, Miss Madeline, are you still there? It was unclear how he knew that name. As time moved on, Invincible Champion's terror points increased to 15% before stabilizing at that number. The reason he was panicking was not because he had run into a real monster, but because after searching for a while, he could not find the way out of the 2nd floor. Every corridor, every room, as well as the paintings, lamps, and decorations on the walls, they all seemed unfamiliar yet familiar. The building displayed an obvious spatial anomaly. Its interior was much larger than what it looked like from the outside. The length of the corridor seemed to be constantly changing. When he counted the number of doors on both sides of the corridor, he would get a different number every time. So far, Invincible Champion had yet to reach the end of any corridor. Whenever he reached the end of a corridor, he would see a new corner or T-junction. The consumption of stamina points while walking was minuscule. Only after walking for a long time would there be a significant decrease in stamina points. This was similar to the situation in reality. If you let a person walk continuously for more than 20 minutes, he would feel a little tired. After 40 minutes, his legs would feel sore. After more than an hour, he would definitely have to stop and rest. Of course, the examples used here were ordinary people, not professional athletes. This kind of exhaustion accumulated gradually, and the longer it lasted, the more obvious it became. Under the influence of fear, Invincible Champion's reaction speed increased. When he saw his stamina points dropping at a visible rate, he did not choose to rest but chose to move faster. He was no longer exploring, he was running. He received a strong psychological warning that if he did not do something soon, he would not only be trapped. When his stamina points dropped to a certain level, something in the dark would find him. Ha! Invincible Champion's breathing became heavy. He looked at the game menu. He still had about 1,000 stamina points, and he wasn't running. He was just walking. This shouldn't be happening. He stopped moving and placed his hands on his knees. He caught his breath and swallowed. At that moment, he suddenly felt a strange feeling in his stomach, but he could not tell what it was. What's going on? Invincible Champion mumbled to himself. Talking to himself could help him reduce the effect of fear and help him focus. Suddenly, his eyes caught something. He turned around and saw a mirror beside him. It was a rectangular mirror about 2 meters tall, and it was embedded in the wall of the corridor. It was surrounded by a wooden frame, and the carvings were simple but exquisite. That's strange. Was this here? He could not help but ask. Confusion appeared on his face. At that moment, Invincible Champion was looking ahead numbly. He focused on the end of the corridor and no longer paid attention to the doors on both sides of the corridor. He definitely did not pay attention to the paintings, wall lamps, and sculptures. However, the corridor was not that wide, and this was the first time he had seen something like a mirror. Furthermore, it was such a large mirror, so there was no reason for him not to notice it. When he saw the mirror, Invincible Champion's side was facing the mirror. He was bent over with his hands on his knees. However, when he turned his attention to the mirror, he instinctively straightened his body and turned his face away. This turn scared him so much that he almost fainted. The reflection in the mirror looked no different from the real Invincible Champion, but the Invincible Champion in the mirror had his stomach exposed. There was no clothing or skin on his stomach, and with one glance, one could see a ball of intestines. Invincible Champion sucked in a cold breath, and his face blanched. He staggered back until he leaned against the wall on the other side of the corridor. His eyes widened, and his breathing stopped for 10 seconds. Illusion. This is an illusion. After he regained some of his composure, he walked to stand before the mirror with a hateful expression. Who are you trying to scare? It's just seeing my own intestines. Even though he said that, the terror points would not lie. He was still afraid, but when one was scared to the extreme, they would react in many different ways, and anger was one of them. Invincible Champion's eyes involuntarily fell on his stomach in the mirror. He could see that the intestines were still wriggling inside it. Upon closer inspection, one would be able to see some strange details. The more he looked at the intestines, the stranger they became. It looked like a corridor. He felt a chill run down his spine, and his neck was so stiff that he could not move. 2 seconds later, he roared angrily and kicked the mirror to shatter it. Then, he turned to leave. However, as he turned around, he saw many similar mirrors on both sides of the corridor. The original doors had all disappeared, and the mirrors were everywhere. Brother Invincible roared and rushed out. He didn't know whether this situation was an illusion or a real change in the big house, but he felt fear and danger. He didn't want to stay in these corridors for a second longer. Clang! Clang! A figure smashed through the glass window and came out from the second floor of the big house. The moment he fell from the sky, Invincible Champion was not prepared. 1 second ago, he was still in the corridor, and he was running in the middle of the corridor. There was a path ahead, but the next second, the pane of glass cutting through his skin came. He seemed to have run into something, and his body lost its center of gravity and started to fall. In the short moment before he died, he saw the scene outside the room. The stone wall was covered in mold, the withered trees that surrounded it, and the large black reflection in the stagnant water of the mountain pool. An eerie presence seeped out from the pool, the wall, and the depths of the room. Darkness leaned on both the physical and mental world. Amidst the formless silence, Invincible Champion fell into the pond outside the house. The eerie pond swallowed him up, and he could not make a sound. The mansion before him was like a cold demonic shadow, looking down on another life. The last thing that was reflected in this professional player's eyes was a blood moon in the sky. Team member, Invincible Champion has died. A plot item has been transferred. The system announcement shocked Wang Tongji and Long Aomin. No way. A level 15 professional player died just like that. Wang Tongji gasped. He opened the game menu to look at the team tab to confirm. As he expected, the player's name had turned gray, and the alive next to it had turned into dead. By then, Long Aomin and Feng Bujue had searched through quite a number of rooms, but they had not found anything substantial. Other than the few times when the floor suddenly caved in and the traps that were filled with spikes there were no clues or rewards. If the two of us had split up, then the few dangers that we ran into earlier might have been fatal, Long Aomin replied. Long Aomin replied and then added, I wonder if Brother Feng will be in danger on his own. Brother Ju, you don't have to worry about him. Since it was him who suggested splitting up, he must have considered the risk. Wang Tongji said. By the way, when I was idle in the login lobby, I read the game manual. If a player dies while carrying a plot item, the item will randomly spawn around one of their teammates. Long Aomin had been through more team scenarios, so he was more experienced than Feng Bujue. He replied, Okay, I know. Let's look around now. The two of them immediately rummaged around, but as the saying goes, an unintentionally planted willow yields shade. They did not find the letter, but under a pile of junk on the floor, they found a poem from the Ghost Palace. Wanderers in the Valley of Joy, through the two bright windows you can see, elves dance to the music of the lyre, around the throne of the king, his majesty reason. His presence is noble and majestic, the king of a country, his majesty is extraordinary. Side quest progress updated. Find all 6 sections of the Haunted Palace. Current progress 1-6. Chapter 46. The dining room was large, and there was a long table placed in the middle. It was so long that the people sitting at the two ends had to shout to communicate. The white tablecloth was littered with several empty plates and forks, as well as several fallen candlesticks. There was a chandelier above the table. It was bigger than the one in the living room, but it was no longer lit. The dining room relied on the wall lamp. The wooden chairs were placed messily, and a few of them were lying on the ground, covered in spider webs. When Passing Rain heard the system announcement, she paused for a second before continuing her search. The expression on her face was as cold as ice. It was Laughing Soul who spoke first. That big brother who looked so powerful is dead. Powerful? Passing Rain asked. How did you know? His level is high and he's a professional player, Laughing Soul replied. Passing Rain used her sword to pick up a section of the tablecloth. She did not stop her search and said, Our level will increase as well, and we can call ourselves professional players. Cousin, you're messing with me again. Laughing Soul narrowed her eyes at Passing Rain and grumbled, Now that all the professional players have died, why are you still so calm? At this moment, Passing Rain and Ruali pulled out a letter from under the table and said, Plot item. Item name, an ink-stained letter. Item type, plot. Item quality, normal. Function, unknown. Can be taken out of the scenario, no remark. The content of the letter is partially covered in ink and cannot be deciphered. She passed the letter to Laughing Soul and said, This thing is unlikely to have been under the table all along. It was probably reset after that invincible champion died. Laughing Soul accepted the letter and opened it to read. Then she placed it inside the backpack that was slung around her waist. She licked her lips. Assuming this letter is one of the clues to solve the main storyline, there is a possibility that the person who carries this letter will be attacked by an unknown force in this house and will be in great danger. So, even the professional players have died? Passing Rain asked. Yes, but this is strange, Laughing Soul said. There were 4 of them, so why did only one die, and it was the strongest one? Could it be? There's no need for, could it be? Feng Bujue's voice suddenly rang out. He walked in from the door. Obviously, we've split up. Passing Rain and Laughing Soul both turned to look at him. Feng Bujue continued, and from the fact that he has already been defeated, this strongest should be a question mark. His level is higher than yours, and he is a professional player, Passing Rain told Feng Bujue. She repeated the words that Laughing Soul had used to convince herself. My level will also increase. I can also call myself a professional player. Does that make me strong? Feng Bujue replied casually. Laughing Soul covered her mouth and almost laughed out loud. Ruali and Ruyu's expressions changed. How long have you been here? I just arrived. What's wrong? Feng Bujue asked. He had indeed not heard the conversation between the two. He had only heard the last sentence from Laughing Soul. Passing Rain was silent for 2 seconds before saying, "Were you the one who discovered the Haunted Palace side quest?" "Yes," Feng Bujue replied. "I found the 1st and 5th stanza. Did you find the other 2? Laughing Soul shook her head. "No, but we did run into quite a number of traps along the way." Passing Rain asked, "What is the Haunted Palace? Is it a word? Or an item?" "It's a poem." Wang Tanji also appeared at the entrance of the restaurant, and Long Aomin was next to him. "Perfect timing," Feng Bujue said. "Which stanza did you find?" "The good news is we found 2 stanzas," Long Aomin said. "The bad news is we can't memorize them." Wang Tanji did not look ashamed. In fact, he looked proud of himself. "If you repeat a few sentences you will remember them," Feng Bujue said. The two of them exchanged 4 or 5 sentences at the same time. After Feng Bujue listened to them, he said, "It should be the 2nd and 3rd stanza." Then, he did something shocking. He repeated the 2 stanzas that Xiao Tan and Brother Long had found and asked them if they were correct. "Brother Bujue, what's going on?" Wang Tanji gasped. "You've been following us? This room is born from my memory in real life. Actually, I'm a serial killer, and this is one of my bases," Feng Bujue said calmly. "The Haunted Palace that you see is something I wrote on the wall when I was bored." Wang Tanji's jaw was like it had been dislocated. His mouth was open, and his eyes were bulging as he stared at Feng Bujue. His mind was a mess. 10 seconds later, Feng Bujue told him, "You are the only one who still hasn't realized that this is a joke." "Ha ha ha!" Long Aomin suddenly laughed. He had realized that Feng Bujue was joking, but he did not think it was funny. However, Wang Tanji's reaction of believing it was true made him speechless. "Mr. Feng, now that the cold joke is over, can you tell us the actual situation?" Laughing Soul said. "You not only know the order of the stanzas, you can even recite the content. Then, you must know the origin of the poem, right?" "The poem comes from Edgar Allan Poe's short story, The Fall of the House of Usher," Feng Bujue said. "I believe this scenario is based on that." He pulled over a stool and sat down. "Have any of you read it before?" "No." Other than Passing Rain and Ruali, the other 3 were like primary school students answering their teacher's question in unison. "It's good that you haven't. After all, his novels are not that interesting anyway," Feng Bujue said. "Poe is a high-class literary ruffian. He dabbles in gambling and drinking. He once chased after a lady and married a loli. He never gets tired of writing. Most of his novels only focus on the atmosphere and ignore the plot. Sometimes he would do something like this. For example, at the beginning of Ligeia, he randomly made up a passage, added a dash, and said that it came from Joseph Glanville. If there was a search engine in the 19th century, this guy would have been paraded through the streets by the critics. "You sound like a hardcore fan," Passing Rain and Ruali said coldly. "You sound like you're jealous." Laughing Soul tossed him a condescending look. "The more I hear, the more it sounds like you," Wang Tanji said. "Brother Feng, you have to respect yourself." Long Aomin did not know what to say, so he tried to persuade him. Feng Bujue stood up and said with a straight face, "I know a thing or two. It's nothing. You can even memorize that poem, so there's no need to explain yourself," Passing Rain interrupted. "Big sister," Feng Bujue said. "How old are you? Call me Big Sister." "Little sister. I dare you to call me that again." Feng Bujue took a deep breath. "Like a heroine. Actually, I have quite a good memory. Mr. Feng, you really don't need to explain yourself to me." Passing Rain and Ruali's lips curled up into an imperceptible smile. Feng Bujue was stunned for about 3 seconds before turning around like nothing had happened. "The wind sure is loud today." Even Long Aomin felt embarrassed. "Brother Feng, even if you've been exposed, don't mind it. Let's continue to look for clues." Feng Bujue almost coughed out a mouthful of blood. He thought to himself, couldn't you have just said the second half of your sentence? Was the first half of your sentence meant to add insult to injury? By the way, I was about to ask you something. Don't you think it's weird? Feng Bujue asked seriously. Why are we all in the dining room? The structure of this room should be changing. If we're all gathered at the same time, does that mean? Before he finished, there was a bang, and the only door in the dining room closed on its own. Chapter 47. About 10 minutes ago. At the time, Invincible Champion was still alive, and Feng Bujue was still inside the cellar. Feng Bujue knocked on the coffin lid and said teasingly, Hey, Miss Madeline, are you still there? Naturally, he did not expect the person inside the coffin to reply in an unhappy tone, Get lost, because he already knew that it should be empty. After reading the first part of The Haunted Palace, Feng Bujue believed that the setting of this mansion was probably the Usher mansion from a certain novel. Now that he was inside the cellar and saw the fifth part of The Haunted Palace on the wall, he was even more certain. It was true that Feng Bujue had a good memory, but he had not reached the stage where he could remember everything he saw. Other than the things that were swept out of his memory loft as trash, other memories like this novel that he had read before, he could recall about 60 to 70% of the content. It was impossible for him to stand there and memorize all 6 parts of The Haunted Palace after reading the first part. Therefore, he had Xiao Tan and Brother Long say some words to remind him, and the 2 parts of the poem in his memory slowly became clearer. Of course, Feng Bujue could remember the plot of the novel more clearly. Many people knew the name of Edgar Allan Poe. He was the founder of detective fiction. His Murder on the Rue Morgue was considered the first true detective novel in modern literature. When he published it, he used the term mystery novel. However, that was in 1841, and The Collapse of the House of Usher was written before that story. It was a Gothic thriller, and it was filled with a dark and gloomy atmosphere. The plot of the story went like this. The main character's old friend, Roderick Usher, had a family that suffered from a mysterious hereditary disease for generations. The large house that he lived in was bound by some kind of strange curse. Over the centuries, the Usher family passed down the family line, and the original name of the house was slowly forgotten by people. This building was equated with this family. When people mentioned the House of Usher, they were referring to both this building and this family. One day, Roderick wrote a letter to the main character. In the letter, he said that he did not have long to live. Illness had tormented him to the point that he was haggard and mentally unstable. The unknown, terrifying power in the House of Usher would destroy his rationality and take his life. The protagonist came to visit and accompany his old friend, hoping that he would get better. But on the night of the main character's arrival, Roderick's sister, Miss Madeline, passed away due to an illness. She was Roderick's only family in the world, his only companion for many years. Lady Madeline had been sick for many years, and had died, but she had always fought against it, and had never been bedridden. Roderick's abnormal melancholy and near mental breakdown was mainly caused by her. Roderick requested to find a cellar to keep his sister's body for 14 days before she was buried. The protagonist helped his friend put Miss Madeline into the coffin and placed her in the cellar. However, no one knew that she was still alive. 7 to 8 days later, the grief-stricken Roderick had descended into madness. That horrifying night, the main character saw the horrifying Miss Madeline appear in the house and scare her brother to death. Then, he finally breathed his last. The main character escaped from the House of Usher and saw the building collapse into the lake with his own eyes. There were many illogical things in this story. For example, how could Madeline be buried alive without anyone noticing? How could a woman who had struggled in the coffin for 7 to 8 days still have the energy to fight her way back to the house? How did the house collapse? Was it an earthquake or a directional explosion? However, the readers of the 19th century would not ask such questions about a horror story. Instead, after the end of the 20th century, there were more and more professionals who relied on overinterpretation and nitpicking in various fields, especially in the field of culture. If Poe lived in the 21st century, any academic fraud who claimed to be a professor would have the guts to criticize him. Or they would rely on in-depth interpretation of his work to express some opinions that were not in the original work. However, Cherngu decided not to delve into this topic and returned to the story. Based on the plot of the novel, the coffin had to be empty. Regardless of whether the shadow that Feng Bujue saw in the tunnel was Madeline's spirit or not, her body was no longer in the cellar but inside the house. Feng Bujue pushed open the coffin lid. As he expected, it was empty. He waved his hand to disperse the dust and used the flashlight to light up the interior of the coffin. Soon, he discovered that there was a small line of words carved on a wooden board at the head. It looked like it was scratched out by fingernails. There was only one sentence, "He knows." There was no punctuation and the words were crooked. Putting himself in Madeline's shoes, there was no light inside the coffin, so she could not tell whether her handwriting was neat or not. She had to maintain a certain posture to carve the words on the top of her head, so it was already impressive that she could be recognized. Hidden mission triggered. When Feng Bujue heard the system announcement, he immediately opened the menu. Then, he saw another notification appear before him. The hidden mission in the scenario can provide you with a handsome reward, but the difficulty of discovering and completing the hidden mission will be higher than the main mission and side mission. System announcements related to the hidden mission, including audio, text, and the mission content in the menu, can only be seen by the player who discovered the mission. If the hidden mission is discovered in a group setting, all the players present will receive the mission together. However, the hidden mission cannot be shared. After one or more players describe the mission content to the other players will be able to see the mission content and progress in the menu, but it will not be seen as accepting the mission, and they will not receive the completion reward. The above announcement will only appear when the player discovers the hidden mission for the first time. If you wish to read it again, you can search for it in the game manual. In other words, whoever discovers the hidden mission will have to deal with it and claim the reward alone. Feng Bujue closed the two windows and glanced at the mission. Save Miss Madeline's soul. Oh, I see, Feng Bujue said. He already had a theory about the plot, but the problem was, how was he going to escape from this cellar? He raised the flashlight again and did a more detailed search, but he came up with nothing. He turned his attention back to the coffin. Other than the sentence and some scratches left on the wood, there were no other valuable clues. Feng Bujue placed the flashlight inside the coffin and tilted the side that was glowing. Then, he bent down to pick up the heavy coffin lid and leaned it against the wall. He looked both the front and back of the coffin, but there was nothing on the large piece of wood. Wait a minute. Feng Bujue suddenly stopped moving, and he thought, the person inside the coffin should be lying on their back, and the carving should be done on the coffin lid. Even if she was worried that someone might miss the carving on the lid when they opened the coffin, she carved it above the head. But how come there is not even a trace of struggle on this board? The scratches and kicks are all on other places, but this coffin lid looks like it's brand new. Feng Bujue picked up the flashlight and shone it on the coffin lid that was leaning against the wall. He squatted down and stared at the piece of wood. He reached out to knock on it again. The coffin lid made a sound like it was made of solid wood, and it did not sound like there was a hidden compartment. At that moment, Feng Bujue made a very bold decision, at least for others. He raised the coffin lid and covered 2/3 of the coffin vertically. Then he crawled into the coffin. After lying down, he used both of his hands to hold the coffin lid. He pulled as hard as he could, and the coffin returned to its original state. Lying inside, he did not feel very comfortable. It was not because of his mentality, but because there was no cushion inside the coffin. It was purely made of wood, and it felt like he was sleeping on a hard bed with nothing on it. Feng Bujue placed himself in the same situation as Miss Madeline. He used the flashlight to shine on the coffin lid and said, "How did you manage to get out?" As he spoke, he used one hand to try to push on the coffin lid. But to his surprise, it did not budge. "Oh!" Feng Bujue was startled. He immediately placed the flashlight next to his neck and used both his hands and feet to push and kick the coffin lid, but it still did not budge. After a while, just as he was about to stop to catch his breath, he saw that on the coffin lid, the piece of wood that was facing his face protruded slightly and slowly turned into the shape of a human face. It was hard to tell the gender of the face, and the voice sounded like that of an old witch. It said to Feng Bujue, "Man who is about to die, do you wish to leave this place?" "Yes," Feng Bujue replied. He wanted to see what kind of trick this coffin monster had up its sleeve. "What can you give me?" the coffin lid asked. At that moment, the system announcement said, "You can sacrifice a normal or higher quality equipment to have the monster transport you back to the space outside the cellar." "Oh, so I can sacrifice it, right?" Feng Bujue thought. "In other words, I can choose not to sacrifice it." He pondered. And what if the player doesn't have the equipment that fits the criteria? They won't be trapped here, right? There must be another way. "Coffin, I do not wish to give you anything," Feng Bujue replied. The face suddenly changed. The eyes and mouth opened strangely. It became so scary that a normal person would have been spooked. However, it was just a human face that was protruding from the coffin lid. It could not attack the person inside the coffin. At most, it could scare the person inside. Then you will be trapped here forever, dying in fear and hunger. Even if your fingertips are scraped, even if your toes and knees are shattered, you will not be able to break through. With a click, Feng Bujue took out the M1911A1 pistol from his backpack and opened the safety. "Let me introduce you." Feng Bujue used the barrel of the gun to point at the forehead of the face. Some interesting gadgets that were born after the Second Industrial Revolution. The weapon in your hand will not cause enough damage for you to escape. 1 or 2 small wounds are nothing, the coffin lid replied. "I know you can change and repair yourself, but what about the coffins around me, above me, and below me?" Feng Bujue asked. "Ha ha ha." The face on the coffin lid laughed. At the same time, the words carved by Madeline above Feng Bujue's head and the markings on the surrounding wood disappeared. "As long as I want to." So that's how it is. Since I've already received the quest and discovered the secret of the coffin, I don't need these details like the carving anymore, right? Feng Bujue said as he put the gun away. "Now, do you want to change your mind?" the coffin lid asked. "Perhaps you can give me the weapon from earlier, and I will send you out of here." Feng Bujue took out the Western kitchen knife and Mario's wrench from his backpack. "You have 2 choices. 1. Send me back to the house and end this pleasant conversation." He raised his hand and slashed at the coffin lid, leaving a cut. 2. I'll burn you for firewood." Several seconds later, Feng Bujue successfully reappeared inside the house, but he was no longer in the living room but in a corridor. There was a painting on the wall next to him, but it was not of a cellar but an ugly and abstract human face. He did not stop. After confirming that his life points were full and that he had plenty of stamina points left, he continued his exploration. Chapter 48. Brother Ju, this is... Wang Tongji was so scared that he stuttered again. "If I didn't interrupt you, you would have continued to beep like this, right?" Feng Bujue asked. Long Aomin turned around. "Brother Feng, how did you manage to say the word silenced?" "Obviously, when I said the curse, I didn't mean it to be insulting, so the system didn't stop me. However, the word itself is not very elegant, so it was silenced," Feng Bujue explained. "Speaking of which, now is not the time to be dwelling on that, is it?" Ping ping ping. Crash, the sound of light bulbs exploding and the sound of glass shattering could be heard. The lights around the dining room all exploded at this time, and the room fell into darkness. Before the dust settled, Feng Bujue had already taken out a flashlight from his inventory. He switched it on and shone the light upward, right at his face. "Why do you have to do this? You can just turn it off. Why do you have to make such a big fuss?" he said as he put on the eye of hostility. Xiao Tan and Brother Long saw the light shining upward in the dark. They turned their backs on Feng Bujue and slowly retreated to his side. At the same time, they took out flashlights from their inventory and switched them on. Each of them lit up a fan-shaped area before them. Name: Constant Glimmer Lantern. Item Type: Tool. Rarity: Broken Function. Light Special Effect: Never extinguish. She placed the lantern directly on the long table. Just as the item's description said, the lantern was always lit, and the illumination range was a sphere with a radius of 5 meters. Laughing Soul took out a yellow miner's hat. She turned on the round light in front of the hat and held it in her hand. Perhaps because she felt uncomfortable or ugly wearing it, she did not put it on her head. They all lowered their breathing and listened carefully to see if there was any threat approaching in the quiet darkness. Suddenly, a few tinkling sounds came from above. Everyone looked up and saw that the large glass chandelier above the dining table was tilted by some kind of force, and the person it was pointing at was Feng Bujue. In the blink of an eye, the steel cable above the chandelier suddenly broke, and an object half the size of a washing machine flew straight towards Feng Bujue. His first reaction was to hide under the table. However, there was someone whose reaction and actions were faster than Feng Bujue's, and by more than one step. Ruali and Ruayu lightly tapped their feet, stepped on the chair, and jumped into the air. Her movements were agile, but her figure did not lose the unique gentleness of a woman. The blade of her sword was cold, and so was her gaze. The sword came out as fast as lightning. She neatly cut the flying chandelier in half. After the metal frame of the lamp was cut in half, the object fell vertically as if it had lost its power, and large pieces of glass shattered on the ground. Ruali and Ruayu floated down lightly. She used one hand to brush away a strand of hair that had fallen to her forehead. Her other hand held the sword, and even her breathing did not speed up at all. It could be said that she was awe-inspiring, valiant, and heroic. Xiao Tan and Brother Long were shocked. The scene of Feng Bujue wildly smashing the head of the green zombie yesterday instantly became incomparably low-end in their minds. The ruthless female swordsman in front of them, in terms of skill and ferocity, was 10 times better than him. Comparing the battle scene between the two of them was like comparing Qin Fanxian to Windmark. There was really no way to look at it. No need to thank me. Ruayu saw that Feng Bujue was about to say something, so she directly said it first. Feng Bujue swallowed the emotional, "Thank you for saving my life," in his heart. He thought to himself, "Thank goodness I didn't say it out loud." That was a line used by the small fries in wuxia movies. He cleared his throat and said, Ruoyu, can you twist that lamp of yours a little brighter?" "No." Ruoyu directly replied. Can you let me take a look?" Feng Bujue asked. "Why?" Ruoyu asked. "I have a skill that can repair broken equipment and tools in a short amount of time," Feng Bujue said. "If that lamp of yours is below normal quality." Before he could finish, Ruoyu nimbly picked up the lamp on the table with her sword and instantly brought it to him. "Broken." Ruoyu liked to be concise, and naturally, he understood. He took the lamp and used hasty repair, but the system said, "Skill activation failed." Feng Bujue did not pay it much mind because failure was normal. His workmanship mastery was level F, and the success rate of activating the skill was 20%. Like last time, when he used the flashlight, he was lucky to succeed on the first try. This time, he was not so lucky. He used it twice and finally succeeded. The skill that consumed 100 stamina points took 300 stamina points to activate. After the lantern was restored to normal quality, it suddenly lit up and lit up the entire restaurant. The dining room was quite large. In fact, it was the largest room that they had passed so far. At that moment, in the corner that was furthest away from them, they saw a shadow, or rather, a ghost. It was a middle-aged man. He was wearing a classic black suit. His skin was pale, and his eyes were sunken. His facial features were clear, and his forehead was wide. His jaw was square, and he was unforgettable. According to popular legends, the appearance of a ghost, such as their attire, was usually how they looked when they were alive or how they looked when they were alive. Based on this man's appearance, he was probably Roderick Usher. Initially, the ghost was hiding in a corner that even the flashlight could not reach, hiding in the shadows. However, at that moment, the sudden light from the lamp made it impossible for him to hide. Roderick seemed to be afraid of the light. He used his hands to shield his eyes, curled his body, and growled. Fong Bujue held the lantern and showed no fear. He approached the spirit with steady footsteps, and his tone was confident. "Mr. Usher, please tell us, how do we leave this place?" "Don't come any closer," Roderick said. "Otherwise you will." Roderick's tone was gentle at first, and it even made people feel that he was a little weak. However, when he reached the last few words, he removed his hands from his face, revealing a distorted face. He roared like a hysterical beast, "Pay the price!" Fong Bujue stood 1 meter away from him, but he did not react. The people behind him were, to varying degrees, shocked by Roderick's sudden change. "What are you going to do? Control the chair to hit me on the back of my head?" Fong Bujue knew that this man was an untouchable spirit. He could only control the things in the room to attack him. At that moment, a chair floated into the air and flew toward Fong Bujue's back. This time, Long Aomin was closer. He took a big step forward and extended his arm to block the attack for Fong Bujue with Ultron's fragment. "There are 5 people here, and you seem to be interested in me," Fong Bujue said in a menacing tone. "Where is Madeline's body? You placed it next to yours, didn't you?" Roderick roared, and the plates, cutlery, candlesticks, and other objects on the dining table floated into the air. Without another word, Fong Bujue took out the slowing sand from his inventory and tossed the bottle to the ground. This item could only slow down the monsters within a radius of 100 meters by 10 times, but it could not physically slow down the movement of the objects. However, after Roderick was slowed down, the unknown force that kept the objects floating in the air seemed to be affected, and the objects that floated in the air fell to the ground. If one had to make an analogy, the telekinesis of these ghosts was like riding a bicycle. If the movement was slowed down by 10 times, it would not be slowing down but falling over. Fong Bujue raised the lantern and aimed the flashlight at Roderick as well. Facing this formless spirit, he had no way of attacking, so he tried to use the light that the spirit was so afraid of to exert some influence on him. Roderick let out a long and muffled sound. He turned around very slowly, as if he wanted to use his hand to block the light and escape. However, his movements were too slow, and it was of no use at all. The difficulty of this scenario is not that high. As long as we have strong lighting, stay alert when facing the traps in the room, and don't get tricked by illusions, we don't have to worry about life points, Fong Bujue said. This should be a scenario that mainly tests courage and not combat ability. His hand that held the lantern passed through Roderick's body. The light made the spirit more transparent, but that was not enough to kill him. 1 minute soon passed, and Roderick retreated into the wall. Fong Bujue shrugged with disappointment. He returned to the table and put down the lantern. "Let's organize our thoughts." Fong Bujue picked up a wooden chair and sat down. The plot item that was transferred after Brother Invincible's death should be nearby. "We need to find it first." Laughing Soul took out the letter and said, "This is it, but the information provided is limited. The most we can deduce is that the owner who wrote the letter is not in his right mind and is haunted by illness. He invited a friend to visit him. Can I take a look at it? Feng Bujue asked. Of course. Laughing Soul handed the letter to him and added, if you're looking for some hidden message like the first line of letters or romanization, there's nothing in this letter. She had only skimmed through the letter, and she had confirmed that. Feng Bujue studied the letter for a minute and said, players who have read the novel might be able to guess that this is the House of Usher from the content of this letter, and players who haven't read the novel might be able to understand the basic plot setting from this. He returned the letter to Laughing Soul. This item cannot be taken out of the scenario. Looks like it's just a normal plot item and won't be able to push the game forward. Laughing Soul said, then please explain the situation in detail. You seem to know this story well, and the spirit was obviously targeting you, but I was fine even though I had the plot item. There must be a reason for that, right? Chapter 49. Feng Bujue summarized the plot of the novel, and then shared his experience of entering the cellar and the hidden mission that he received. Then, the group could see his mission in the quest tab, but that was all they could see. Even if Feng Bujue completed it, he would be the one to receive the reward. When he was halfway through his explanation, the light on the table dimmed again due to the time limit of the skill. However, Passing Rain and Laughing Soul did not interrupt him and listened intently. After Feng Bujue explained everything that he knew, he concluded in a concluding tone. Then, based on my analysis, the plot of this scenario should be like this. This family has inherited Huntington's disease for generations, and the house itself has some kind of supernatural power that is similar to a curse. Roderick, who has a sister complex, has a split personality, so he buried Madeline alive even though he knew she was still alive. Then, he was tortured by this incident until his mental state broke down. On the night that the story ended, his sister used the mysterious power of the house to return to the main house. She scared her brother to death, and then she died from exhaustion. Madeline's soul and body should be trapped somewhere inside the house by Roderick, and the house itself is hostile toward us living creatures. From a gaming perspective, the main mission is to find the pattern or weakness of this house and then escape. Obviously, we can choose not to do the side quest. It is nothing more than a test of our completion of the map. If we explore more rooms and search more carefully, we'll be able to find all 6 sections of the haunted palace and get the reward. The location of the sibling souls is just a continuation of the plot. It exists as a hidden mission, so we can choose not to do it. After hearing his explanation, Passing Rain was the first to speak. It's okay, we can cooperate with you. Feng Bujue had explained the situation. It was not difficult to clear the scenario, they could choose not to do the side quest, and the hidden mission was not that important. He was about to ask Passing Rain and Laughing Soul if they were willing to help him complete the side quest and the hidden quest, but once again, they answered before he could ask. Then, thank you, Feng Bujue said. This time, Passing Rain did not answer him. She really did not like to talk. Laughing Soul replied politely, you're welcome. We were going to do the side quest anyway. As for the hidden mission, it's definitely not easy. We'll do our best to help you. Feng Bujue immediately stood up and said, now let's return to the question that was interrupted before. Why are we here at the same time? Xiao Tan immediately said, doesn't this house change? As long as it changes a few corridors and connects the spaces, it will naturally lead us here. Long Aomin said, you are talking about how we got here, not why. Laughing Soul licked her lips and mumbled, there are only a few things that can trigger something like this. A certain time has come, the item has been obtained, or, Feng Bujue continued, map exploration is close to the critical point. What do you mean? Xiao Tan asked. You've heard of Haunted Mountain House, right? Feng Bujue asked. That board game. Yes, that one. What if we run out of maps on a certain floor? Feng Bujue asked. Then this floor. Wang Tongji seemed to have figured out the problem. Won't be able to find a new map. Based on what we're seeing, it should be because the first floor has already been searched, and if we continue to explore, we'll return to where we were before. Feng Bujue said, therefore, we arrived at the same room at the same time. This dining room is like the only piece of the puzzle that hasn't been opened. Then, should we go up to the second floor? Long Elmin asked. He reminded Chen Gu with concern. Invincible Champion died there for unknown reasons. There are 3 sections of the haunted palace on the first floor, and 1 section is hidden in the cellar. Therefore, the remaining 2 sections are definitely on the second floor. If we want to do the side quest, we have to go up there. Feng Bujue replied. Furthermore, we've explored most of the first floor, but the main quest hasn't changed. Therefore, be it the main quest, side quest, or hidden quest, to complete any of them we have to go up there. Laughing Soul added, as the ending part of the scenario, the difficulty of the second floor, or rather, the power of the curse upstairs is obviously higher than here. The traps on the second floor will be more dangerous, and there will be more illusions and scary elements. That's why Invincible Champion died. When Xiao Tan heard that, he turned to Feng Bujue and said, Brother Bujue, listen to that. Splitting up killed someone. Brother Invincible Champion died because he wasn't strong enough. Feng Bujue moved his eyes away and put on an expression that said, the wind is so loud today. 10 minutes later, the 5 walked down a few more corridors and found a flight of stairs that led to the second floor. The wooden ladder gave off a moldy smell. When he stepped on it, it creaked noisily. Xiao Tan was so nervous that he accidentally broke a part of the rotten banister, and he gave himself a fright. When they reached the second floor, Long Aomin once again took up the role of leading the way. His new title, Team Defender, gave him a passive skill, Team Defender. With every new teammate around him, his defense would increase by 10%. Even though the attack, defense, and life points in Thriller Paradise were not shown, it did not affect the calculation of these buffs. To put it simply, Brother Long's ability to take hits was 40% stronger than when he was alone. Even if he ran into the powerful zombie again, he would not be sent flying with 1 hit. Feng Bujue and Wang Tongji followed behind Long Aomin, followed by Laughing Soul, and Passing Rain. After walking for a while, Laughing Soul suddenly patted Wang Tongji on his shoulder. The latter's face blanched from her action, but thankfully, he did not scream. Hey, Brother Xiao Tan. Yes? I want to discuss something with you. Let's trade. Wang Tongji asked, which one? What do you have? Laughing Soul asked with a smile. As Xiao Tan moved forward, he started to list out the items in his inventory. I have a Western kitchen knife, a baseball bat, and a slow one. Feng Bujue, who walked in front of him, held his face in his hands and shook his head. He sighed internally. This idiot, Laughing Soul, was tickled by Xiao Tan. She quickly interrupted him and said, All right, are you really going to tell me everything? Wang Tongji was startled. Yes, you're the one who wants to trade with me. Why should I tell you everything? Even Long Aomin, who was leading the group, rolled his eyes and said softly, This kid sure is a genius. Don't bully a child, Passing Rain said coldly from behind. Laughing Soul stuck out her tongue and then told Xiao Tan, I'm sorry, I was just joking with you. I didn't expect you to really say it out loud. Wang Tongji was still defending Passing Rain's earlier statement. I'm 24 this year. Feng Bujue finally could not hold it in anymore. He turned around to glare at Xiao Tan. Recently, I've noticed that your EQ has been increasing. Xiao Tan was confused. Laughing Soul pulled on his sleeve again. All right, I'm serious. She handed him the miner's hat and said, I want to trade this for your flashlight. Xiao Tan looked at the description. It was a piece of equipment and had the effect of a light source. Item name, miner's hat. Item type, armor quality, normal defense points, medium element, none special effect, has the ability to light up, consumes battery. Equip requirement: General ability F or workmanship F. Remark: a safe and reliable piece of armor. The miner's lamp before the hat is very useful. What do you think? I see that you're not wearing any armor on your head. Trading this for your flashlight is a fair trade, right? Laughing Soul said. Xiao Tan looked at it. But isn't it obvious that you're losing out? The yellow color doesn't suit me, and it looks silly on a girl. She smiled cunningly. I think it'll fit you. It's fine, I have a head armor, Chungu replied. He took out a new flashlight from his backpack. When they were at the shopping mall, Feng Bujue had suggested that everyone take 2 flashlights, but Xiao Tan had kept everything in his backpack. He handed it to Laughing Soul and said, I have 2 flashlights. I'll give you one. Laughing Soul blinked her large eyes and stared at Xiao Tan's face for 3 to 5 seconds. Hey! If you don't tell me, you'll get a piece of equipment for free. It looks silly on your head. Keep it for yourself, Xiao Tan replied with a smile. Hearing that, Laughing Soul suddenly understood the meaning of the saying, a natural airhead is always black when cut open. She accepted the flashlight and placed the miner's hat back into her backpack. With complicated emotions, she said, Thank you. There was no joy on her face. Serves you right. Passing Rain added a stab at the right time. That's not right. Long Almin suddenly stopped. He noticed the anomaly. Didn't we just pass by this place? After we came up, we were in a corridor that was similar to this one. Feng Bujue continued. After that, we turned left once and right twice. The straight line after each turn was different, but it was clear that we were not going in circles. Are we hallucinating, or? Long Almin paused. He wanted to hear Feng Bujue's opinion. It should be a hallucination. Passing Rain and Ruali chimed in from the back of the group. At that moment, she was standing before a long mirror. She looked at herself in the mirror. She looked normal from head to toe. Her clothes and equipment had not changed. Only her intestines poked out from her abdomen. In the next second, the 2 sides of the corridor were filled with mirrors. The change was sudden, and there was no sign of spatial distortion. Feng Bujue also turned around and picked the closest mirror to him. He looked at it and said, Not bad, this is clearer than an MRI. He took several steps closer to take a closer look. Oh, I can see the details of the corridor from the intestines. This is very interesting. Chapter 50. Brother Feng, you're being a bit too calm. Even Long Almin felt a chill run down his spine. However, Xiao Tan was calmer this time because he was not that afraid of organs. Laughing Soul did not react much. She only frowned slightly, feeling disgusted. Passing Rain, on the other hand, was as calm as Feng Bujue. Let's assume that Brother Invincible ran into the same situation on the 2nd floor, Feng Bujue said. He was alone, and the same corridor kept repeating itself. The reflection in the mirror suggested that he was trapped inside his own intestines. What would happen to him? Run. Passing Rain's answer was always so simple and direct. Her words were as precious as gold. Yes. Feng Bujue nodded. Therefore we cannot run. In fact, we have to slow down. Did he die from running in a panic? Long Almin thought about it and said, Then, perhaps there will be a trap in this repeating corridor? Or some steel wires that are hard to see with the naked eye hanging in the air. Xiao Tan said, We've already walked down this corridor, so how come we didn't run into any traps, or… Was there a mirror here earlier? Feng Bujue interrupted. The surroundings can change at any time, so it's meaningless. He reached out to knock on the wall. A wall. It might look like a wall, but it could be a door, a window, or nothing at all. He took out the baseball bat from his backpack. From now on, the environment that we see can no longer be used as a reference. Feng Bujue walked to stand before Long Almin. I will lead the way with my eyes closed. He used the bat like a guide stick and pointed it forward. There's no need to close your eyes. Just follow behind me. No matter how I look like I'm about to run into a wall or step on air, There's no need to remind me. Just follow me. He thought about it and added, I will try my best to focus and move as fast as possible, so I'll leave the memorization to you. You don't need to remember the entire route. Just remember the direction of the first 2 turns. If I turn in the same direction for the 3rd time in a row, you can stop me. I say, Brother Jew, what is your real occupation? Laughing Soul could not help but ask the same question that Long Aomin had asked before. Great literary giant. Feng Bujue shamelessly replied. Passing Rain's expression changed slightly, and she asked in a questioning tone, School of Novels? Wow, heroine, you're really amazing. You can even guess it like that. Xiao Tan said. Feng Bujue was also puzzled. He thought to himself, how many times has she seen through me? What's going on? Then you are a celebrity? Laughing Soul asked. He's probably not as famous as a B-list or B-list actor, Feng Bujue said bluntly. Laughing Soul was startled. She immediately opened the menu to look at the player ID in the team tab and thought, Feng Bujue. Feng Bujue. No way? He is that Bujue? His pen name and online name are both Bujue. Cousin. He is you. Laughing Soul turned around and lowered her voice like she wanted to whisper something to Passing Rain. I know. Passing Rain interrupted her and then raised her voice to say, Now is not the time to chat. Lead the way, great literary giant. Feng Bujue did not notice anything. He shrugged and turned around. He closed his eyes, extended the baseball bat forward, and started to move forward. He had no choice but to bend over. The bat was about 100 centimeters long. The length of the bat could normally reach the user's chest, but the bat only went past the user's waist. The speed at which the 5 of them advanced was naturally slightly slower than before, but for a blind person, this was already considered fast. Until they turned the first corner, everything was normal. The wall at the end of the corridor was real. Feng Bujue touched the wall and turned left. Weirdly enough, after he made the turn, he was not facing the left corridor but slightly slanted. The 4 with their eyes open followed him, and then realized something shocking. Feng Bujue's body was slowly sinking into the wall on his right. They did not speak and just followed him. As the straight line that Feng Bujue was moving forward crossed the straight line that the corridor had taken, the rest of the group passed through the wall one after another. The human eye could be easily misled, but the natural sense of balance of the human body allowed one to walk in a straight line without the aid of sight. The corridor looked like it was at a right angle, but it was actually slightly slanted. Feng Bujue walked with his eyes closed. When he reached the end, he turned 90 degrees based on his intuition, and that was how he deviated from the direction of the corridor. Under his lead, the 5 moved between the walls. The ground under their feet, the stairs, and the decorations on both sides were all unbelievable. The second floor of this big house was an extremely strange space. Everything one saw, whether it was the door, the window, the wall, or even the big hole in the ground, was both real and fake. It was even more difficult to fathom than a maze in the general sense. The corridor that looked straight was also curved, and the places that looked like walls could be passed through. Only by closing their eyes could they walk in a straight line and follow the path in their mind without any distractions. Otherwise, they would definitely be confused. This strange journey lasted for a full 30 minutes. During this time, they did not encounter any traps, nor were they attacked by any spirits. It seemed that even the ghosts that could pass through walls did not dare enter this area of illusion. Along the way, other than the changes in the environment that were used to confuse the players, there were plenty of the through the intestine mirror. There were also many twisted portraits that made one feel dizzy just by looking at them. It could be said that the further one walked down this path, the more chilling it became. If one was alone in this scenario and explored it with their eyes open, it was indeed possible to clear the scenario, but one had to have a strong mental fortitude to do so. The long silence lowered the group's morale, but thankfully, it all came to an end. Feng Bujue came to a door. It was a real door, and there were real walls on both sides. It looked like this was the end of the corridor of illusion. Actually, if this was a normal corridor, they would have been able to complete it in 15 minutes. But at that moment, even though it took him half an hour to finish the journey, Feng Bujue was already exhausted. His stamina points were still okay, but the main problem was the mental fatigue. He was not blind, and he had not received professional training. Walking for so long with his eyes closed was extremely difficult. If the spectators are interested, they may try it. Close your eyes and do not open them in the middle. Go to every room in the house you are familiar with, and you will understand the degree of difficulty. Right, be careful. Looks like we're here, Long Aomin, who walked in second, said. Feng Bujue opened his eyes to get used to the dim light around him. Then he saw the end, a door that looked like it was made from human flesh. On the flesh door, there were some veins that looked like blood vessels, and they formed a poem from the haunted palace. Pearls shine, gems shine, the door of the haunted palace. Their sleeves flutter, their faces glow, the fairies come. Their echoes travel far, their melodies fill the air, their mission is to sing. He praised his king's wisdom and wisdom. Side quest progress updated. Find all 6 sections of the haunted palace. Current progress 1-6. This is the 4th section, so only the 6th section is left, Feng Bujue said as he carelessly touched the doorknob that was made from bone. Brother Feng, let me walk in front, Long Aomin suggested. It's fine. Feng Bujue had already put the baseball bat away, and this time, he did not even put on the eye of hostility. Earlier, in the dining room, when Roderick activated the chandelier, due to the darkness, the eye of hostility did not catch sight of him. Later, when he controlled the chair, Feng Bujue observed that Roderick's target was the wooden chair itself. This went to show that the eye of hostility was useless against a monster that relied on indirect attacks. Pushing the door open, he was greeted by a medium-sized room. There were no windows or lights on all 4 sides, only walls made of flesh and a floor made of bones. The ceiling was covered with long black hair, and the hair was weaved together in a specific way to form an arched roof. Other than this door, there was no other exit in this room. On a beam made of human bones in the middle of the room hung 2 bodies, a man and a woman. Their bodies were bound by something that looked like intestines, and they hung in midair. The man was wearing a classic black suit, and the woman was wearing a white dress. The 2 bodies showed no signs of decay, but their skin was pale. Their eyes were closed, and an indescribable air of death radiated from them. Chapter 51. When Feng Bujue saw the room, he instinctively blurted out, "Could this be SCP-002, what is it?" Long Aomin asked. "Ah!" Wang Tanji suddenly yelped. "Don't ask him, he'll talk to you for hours." Feng Bujue ignored him and continued, "It's a sci-fi set that exists on an online platform and is created by a group of hobbyists. You managed to summarize it in 1 sentence. Wang Tanji gasped. "I remember when you first explained it to me, it took you 3 whole hours. Because at the time, you looked like you believed me, so I wanted to see how far I could go with this kind of bluff." Feng Bujue smiled, and as he spoke, he walked into the room made from flesh. The other 4 followed him in. None of them wanted to stay in the ever-changing corridor outside. Let's assume this is the center of the House of Usher's curse. Feng Bujue walked toward the 2 bodies. The whole room is built from the souls and physical bodies of generations of the House of Usher. In that case, Roderick and Madeline's bodies will eventually become a part of this room. He grabbed Madeline's leg and tried to pull it off, but the intestines were tightly wound, and it was pointless to pull it off from the bottom. Feng Bujue took out the kitchen knife from his backpack and held it in his mouth. It looked like he planned to climb up the body and cut out the intestines. "Let me." Passing Rain placed her hand on Feng Bujue's shoulder to stop him. Feng Bujue turned back to look at Passing Rain, and she looked straight into Feng Bujue's eyes. Passing Rain did not speak but used her finger to point at Fong Bujue and then at the ground. Okay. Fong Bujue understood what she meant. He knelt down on one knee and leaned forward, his back facing the girl. Passing Rain raised her sword and stepped on his shoulder. She leaped up and drew a semicircle in the air with the tip of her sword. She cleanly cut through the intestines of the two hanging corpses. The two corpses immediately fell to the ground. After Passing Rain landed, she turned to Fong Bujue and said, "Thank you for your help. It's fine." Fong Bujue felt like he was the one who had troubled the girl. Right then, Roderick's spirit appeared again. He appeared outside the door and stood behind Laughing Soul. "You can't change anything," Roderick said. His sudden words shocked Laughing Soul. She immediately turned around and shone her flashlight at the door, but she did not see anything. However, on the ground, Roderick's body started to move, and the intestines around his body loosened naturally. When everyone's eyes turned to the door, the spirit controlled his body to stand up from the ground and attacked Fong Bujue again. Fong Bujue was very alert. His eyes were on the door, but when he heard the movement behind him, he reacted immediately. He raised the kitchen knife and turned around to block, and the blade knocked into Roderick's arm. Even though the dead body had regained the ability to move, it was still made of flesh and blood. The blade in Fong Bujue's hand cut into Roderick's right forearm, but it got stuck on the bone and failed to sever it. Long Aomin's reaction was not slow either. Seeing this, he stepped forward and raised his shield to sweep at Roderick's temple. At the end of the day, Ultron Fragment was an excellent piece of equipment, and the setting of lesser adamantium was no joke. Combined with Long Aomin's physique, with one slash, the top of Roderick's head was sent flying. The brain that was exposed was grayish-black in color. It looked like tofu that had been shredded, and it gave off a rather disgusting smell. When Fong Bujue saw that half of the man's head had been sliced off, he quickly used his free hand to take out the wrench. He aimed it at the chin of the dead body and jabbed at it several times. His impatient action gave the feeling that, if he did not do something soon, he would not be able to keep the head. Passing Rain saw that the two could handle it, so she did not help. Soon, only Fong Bujue was left to whip the dead body. He held the kitchen knife in one hand and the wrench in the other. He swung both of his hands at the dead body like he was chopping meat. He did not stop until Roderick's body was a bloody mess. His organs fell out, and most of the bones in his limbs were shattered. He took a deep breath and said, "Phew, I don't think he'll get up again." This time, even Xiao Tan, who was used to seeing dead bodies, could not help but gasp. "What do you mean by get up? How can someone in this form make a get-up motion? You can make dumplings with this pile of stuff." Roderick's body was destroyed, but his spirit appeared at the corner of the room again. "It's useless. My flesh and blood have merged with this room. You are no exception." Before he could finish, the door closed on its own. The flesh on the wall started to squirm. Mouths appeared on the wall one after another. They had sharp fangs that were pointed outwards. Judging from their size, they were large enough to bite a person's face off. "Hey, Brother Bujue, what do we do now?" Wang Tongji took out his kitchen knife, but he did not know what to attack. Was he supposed to chop at the wall of flesh? "If something like a tongue comes out from the wall, I'm not going to entertain you anymore." Laughing Soul looked at the mouths on the wall and said with disgust, "Since we're going to be swallowed sooner or later, why did you do this? Why did you possess your own body to attack me?" Fong Bujue grumbled. He raised the flashlight to shine on Roderick's spirit, but the latter did not seem to be afraid of the light anymore. "You're not afraid of the light in this room, are you?" Fong Bujue said as he walked to Madeline's body and pretended to squat down. Roderick was clearly surprised. "What are you going to do?" "Madeline's soul is unwilling to become a part of the House of Usher. Her image appeared briefly in the cellar, and she called me for help," Fong Bujue said. "Now that I think about it, The "let me out" probably didn't mean that she wanted me to rescue her from the coffin because she had already escaped from the coffin when she was alive. After confirming Roderick's reaction, he stood up and smiled. Madeline wanted me to release her body from this room so that she would not be assimilated into this house like you. Roderick's face turned scarier, and the face of a demon completely replaced the human features. Look around you. How are you going to bring her out? Feng Bujue asked. Do these things really exist? If this house can consume people so quickly, there would be nothing left of the two of you, wouldn't there? He swaggered to the wall and reached out to touch the gaping maw on the wall. The others did not say anything, and they did not show any intention of stopping him. Feng Bujue's confident tone and steady movement gave off a sense of confidence. Roderick could only glare at him angrily, but there was nothing he could do. Feng Bujue's hand passed through the illusion of flesh and reached the real wall, a normal wooden wall. I knew it. The illusion has covered up the real appearance of this room. Now I only need to find. He suddenly paused. Haha, I'm too slow. Where else could it be? Feng Bujue walked to the corner where Roderick was standing. The latter's expression was one of terror, and he roared angrily. However, Feng Bujue ignored this translucent spirit completely. He walked through him and used his hand to explore the wall behind Roderick. Several seconds later, Feng Bujue raised his hands to a height slightly higher than his waist. His palms reached forward and he pulled open a window. The current mission has been changed. The main mission has been updated. The voice message sounded. In the mission tab, the main mission read, Explore the house and find a way to escape. Finally, a new mission appeared. Destroy the magic circle and escape from the house. The red light of the blood moon shone in through the window. When Roderick came into contact with the red light, he disappeared without a trace. At the same time, the light banished all the illusions, returning the house to its original appearance. This was just an attic made of wood and brick. There was no flesh, bone, or hair. The thing that hung the body was not intestines but too thick rope. There was nothing in the room except for a strange magic circle carved in the middle of the floor. This could be a random pattern generated by the game, but there was no way to prove it. At that moment, the only scary thing in the room was the body that was chopped up by Feng Bujue. The other four sighed in relief. Wang Tongji wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and said, You made me so worried. So, you can't harm anyone in this house. Feng Bujue walked to the magic circle on the floor and used the knife to carve out some scratches on it. This room is like the head of the whole house. After the members of the Usher family die, they are sent here and fed to this house like food. He glanced at the pieces of meat next to him. Their bodies will disappear, and their souls will meld with this house and morph into many strange things. Perhaps those twisted sculptures and ugly portraits are reflections of some of the family members. After he finished drawing the magic circle, he put away his weapon and stood up. Also, when I came in and saw the two corpses, I had some doubt. Madeline engraved the words he knows in the coffin. Maybe the he she was referring to was not Roderick. What? Could it be the main character of the novel? Long Elmin asked. No, the main character is obviously innocent, but... Feng Bujue replied. Other than the two owners of the House of Usher, there are other people. About that, there is only 1 or 2 sentences in the book. I remember there was a silent servant who walked on tiptoe, and a family doctor with a cunning expression who panicked when he saw the main character's back. You mean, the members of the Usher family might be victims as well? Laughing Soul asked. Feng Bujue looked around like he was looking for something, and he replied rather distractedly, perhaps the Usher family was targeted by some strange religious group and became their experiment, no, sacrifice. After they died, they would be sacrificed to this house. Who knows what is going on with this house? Perhaps the power of this house comes from a made-up evil god. Up there, Passing Rain suddenly said. Feng Bujue immediately lifted his head. On the slanted roof, he saw the last part of the haunted palace. Now, the visitors have stepped into the valley, through the window that reflected the bloody light, saw the eerie shadows, danced to the shrill music. It was as turbulent as the terrifying Styx. Barged through the pale palace door, the demons have arrived, laughter filled the ears, no longer smiling. Side quest completed, the system said. Feng Bujue sighed in relief and said, "All right, now the magic circle is broken. The house should be back to normal, and we should be able to find a way out soon. How about we just jump out from this window? It took us so long to find an exit," Wang Tanji suggested. "Then jump." Feng Bujue picked up Madeline's body and walked toward the door. "I wish you success." Chapter 52. The process of leaving the house was surprisingly smooth. After the magic circle lost its effect, the House of Usher turned back into a normal manner. On the way back, Chun-Gu noticed an obvious change. The paintings on the walls had all turned into messy graffiti. They looked like paint that had been messed up. Naturally, the illusions and spatial distortion had disappeared as well. The five soon returned to the living room on the first floor. This time, the door was kicked open by Long Aomin. A gust of cold wind blew in, but even though it was snowing outside, the five would not stay in the house for long. The group walked out from the front door, and the system announcement said, "Current quest completed. All main quests have been completed." Feng Bujue, who was carrying Madeline Usher's body, heard the announcement. "Hidden quest completed. So, we only need to bring her out of this house," Feng Bujue said as he placed Madeline's body on the ground. Not long after the body was placed there, it started to decompose at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soon, it turned into a pile of white bones, and the white bones turned into sand several seconds later, turning into dust. A wisp of misty chi drifted into the distance, dissolving into the red sky. "You have completed the scenario. Automatic teleportation in 180 seconds. It was a pleasure working with all of you," Laughing Soul said with a smile. "Yes, it was a pleasure working with all of you," Feng Bujue said. Long Aomin stretched lazily and sighed. "Phew. This scenario sure is depressing. It's all about scaring people. Looks like my terror rating is going to be very bad this time." "Brother Long, you're still considering the terror rating? Almost every time I was scared out of my wits. Even though I was panicking, I only managed to grab it once," Xiao Tan complained. "Goodbye," Passing Rain said lightly. She patted Laughing Soul on her shoulder, signaling for her to leave the scenario. Then, she disappeared from everyone's sight. Laughing Soul waved at the three of them. "Bye-bye." Then she turned to Xiao Tan and said with annoyance, "Hey, thank you for the flashlight." Before Xiao Tan could respond, she turned into white light and teleported away. At this moment Feng Bujue said, "Let's teleport as well. Let's calculate the reward and queue for the next scenario." Long Aomin said, "Brother Feng, I think I'll stop here for the night. The time I set for the connection is 11:40 p.m. Before you came online, I played the game for more than 10 hours, and this scenario took me more than 3 hours. If this continues, I'll have a headache tomorrow." "Okay," Feng Bujue said. "Brother Long, you go first. We'll continue." Feng Bujue and Wang Tanji said their goodbyes to Brother Long, and the three of them left the scenario one after another. The autumn wind blew past the big house beside the mountain pool. This world was still dull, gloomy, and silent. The blood moon in the sky set. At the darkest moment before dawn, the door to the House of Usher was once again slammed shut by an invisible force. Long Aomin glanced at the reward and logged out. After all, the reward could be claimed at any time before the start of the next scenario, so there was no harm in temporarily leaving it in the login lobby. The screen showed that after he left the team, his name in the friend list had also turned gray. Before Feng Bujue had the chance to look at the reward, he noticed 2 friend requests. He clicked them open, and as expected, they were from Passing Rain and Laughing Soul. At the same time, Wang Tongji's excited voice appeared in the team channel again. Brother Ju! I know, they added you as a friend, Feng Bujue said directly. How did you know? Xiao Tan asked. Oh right, they should have added you as well. I guessed that from your reaction, Feng Bujue said. What is there to be excited about? Aren't you excited that a beautiful woman has voluntarily added you as a friend? Wang Tongji asked in a matter-of-fact tone. You are Mr. Perfect. How can you be so shallow? Feng Bujue said. Furthermore, even if they look ugly in real life, they can be beautiful in the game. Brother Ju, if you keep thinking about other people like that, you will be lonely for the rest of your life. How long do I have left in my life? Why should I worry about being lonely? Feng Bujue said. Furthermore, when I was 10, I already knew that only by thinking about the worst can I face any problem calmly. When he said that, he was indeed very calm. Look at how calm I was when my parents passed away, and when I found out I was suffering from an unknown illness. Ha, 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 fine. Xiao Tan's lips twitched, and he was speechless. But then again, that heroine is indeed very powerful. In terms of fighting ability, based on the few moves she has shown, I can say that she is stronger than Brother Long. As Feng Bujue said that, he accepted the 2 friend requests. Currently, the number of players that we have met is very limited. So far, she should be the strongest player that I have met. Then, should we invite them to join us in the next round? Wang Tongji asked. Of course not. Feng Bujue said. Earlier, you said that the number of players that we have met is limited, and now you are suggesting that it will be even harder for us to meet new players. Oh right. Wang Tongji said. In a group of 4, we will meet at most 2 unfamiliar players, and we might not even meet one. In any case, I will look at the rating. I will call you when I am done. Rest for now, Feng Bujue said. Understood, Wang Tongji said. I am going to look at the rating as well. At the same time, in Passing Rain's login lobby, she was also on the phone with Laughing Soul. Laughing Soul said, Cousin, I can see that they have all accepted the friend requests. That Brother Long logged off soon after he accepted. Same, Passing Rain said. Cousin, you already know, right? Laughing Soul asked. You mean that Feng Bujue? Yes, he is a novelist, and his name has Bujue. He said that he is not that famous, so everything fits that Bujue. Perhaps, but the name that he uses in-game cannot be used as proof, Passing Rain replied. Even though calling himself a great writer does fit Bujue's style, and when I asked him if he was a novelist, it was his rather innocent friend who answered first. I cannot be sure that he is. What if he is? Laughing Soul laughed wickedly. If he is, then he is. Why are you laughing? Passing Rain asked. Cousin, aren't you his fan? Isn't it every fan's dream to meet their idol? I just like reading his novels, Passing Rain replied calmly. She did not sound like she was trying to defend herself. I know nothing about him, so there is no such thing as an idol. She paused before adding, furthermore, if it is really as you say, then I shouldn't try to get to know or understand him. Laughing Soul shook her head in her own space and said thoughtfully, so admiration is the furthest emotion from understanding? Do you think I won't know you are quoting Eisen just because you said it so seriously? Passing Rain used a cold tone to expose Laughing Soul mercilessly. Humph. After all, he is your idol, not mine. Perhaps he will ignore you after you change your face. Sigh. Laughing Soul stuck her tongue out at the screen, even though the other party could not see her. I just don't want to be too obvious, but it looks like it is a failure, Passing Rain said. If I show too much strength, there will still be many friend requests. Unfortunately, I can't change my appearance after the first scenario, or else I would have changed my appearance to be as ugly as possible. Only then will I be able to avoid harassment. Regulation. Inside the staff break room, Invincible Champion sipped his coffee unhappily. His shift in sleeping mode had been completed. After 1 hour of rest, he would have to go online in non-sleeping mode. What's wrong? Brother Invincible, did you die in the scenario? A thin young man who looked about 16 sat down on the sofa next to him. He was one of the players at the studio, and his game ID was Phantom Dawn. Inside the studio, the employees basically referred to each other by their in-game names. This was because their in-game IDs were fixed, just like the employee numbers in the unit. For a top studio like Order, they generally didn't have to worry about their members' IDs being used when they entered a game. They were the first to enter the game when the server was launched. Sometimes, they even directly paid the game company to reserve these IDs for them. It's fine if I died. That was my mistake. I immediately went to queue for another scenario, but when I finished that scenario, I came out to take a look. The scenario that I died in earlier had been cleared, and it was cleared by 3 newbies and 2 female players. I almost didn't get any EXP, which means that my contribution was almost negligible. Then, what is going on? Phantom Dawn asked. I was thinking about it earlier, Invincible Champion replied. Invincible Champion replied. Don't tell me I've been tricked by someone who pretended to be weak. That level 11 newbie by the name of Fong Bujue, perhaps he's just acting dumb to make me think that he's a burden, so he's going to act on his own. Oh, I get it now. Initially, you thought that other people were a hindrance, but in the end, you realized that you were the extra, Phantom Dawn said. Kid, whose side are you on? Invincible Champion roared. Haha. Fine, I won't say anything else. Phantom Dawn stood up with a smile. I'm going home to sleep. What's wrong? Is your shift over? Invincible Champion asked. No, it was the leader who told me to stop training and give me a day off, Phantom Dawn replied. What? During the closed beta? Give you a day off? Invincible Champion widened his eyes. You're level 20 now? Level 15. Phantom Dawn shrugged. This is what happened. I killed Brother Fearless and his 2 followers in the killing game mode, and they complained to the team leader that I did not cooperate with them to level up my mastery. He smiled. Sigh. Adults these days are such sore losers. Chapter 53. Time of terror points increase. 0. Highest terror points, 0%. Average terror points, 0%. Your terror rating is Embodiment of Valor. Extra reward obtained. Please choose later. Obtain skill points. 90 additional bonus from skill points. EXP, 900. Game coins, 9,000. Scenario cleared reward. Skill card X1 side quest reward. Additional 1,000 EXP hidden mission reward. Randomly receive an excellent equipment calculation complete. Please continue. Fong Bujue finished reading the calculation list. His level did not increase. He was still level 11, but his EXP had reached 4900110000, and his game coins had reached 77,000. It looked like his earlier worry about leveling up too fast was unnecessary. In reality, he was not leveling up fast enough. The EXP he gained this time could be considered average. The EXP and game coins gained from skill points in Team Survival mode were calculated based on 10 times and 100 times the skill points. In Solo Survival mode, the EXP and game coins were calculated based on 1 time and 100 times the skill points. The difference was huge. Other than that, the duration of the game also determined the EXP gained. For example, this scenario was 1 hour longer than the one Fong Bujue had been through. Even though it was not that difficult, a scenario with a low combat requirement was not that difficult for Fong Bujue. The EXP gained was slightly higher than the previous scenario. Even so, the EXP gained was far from enough for Fong Bujue to level up. Without solving the worldview, one would need to go through 4 to 5 team scenarios of similar difficulty before one could level up. That went to show how difficult it was for the members of the gaming studio. From the start of the closed beta, 8 a.m. on the 4th of April to midnight on the 6th of April, there were about 40 hours in real life. Converting that into the game time in both modes and minus the time needed to go offline, it meant that they had fought for about 5 days in the virtual world to reach level 20. The total time that Feng Bujue had spent in the virtual world was less than 10 hours. Compared to a professional player, he was still at the beginning stage. It's better to get the EXP this time. Feng Bujue muttered. Xiao Tan's level will always be 1 or 2 levels behind me. But after the open beta, he can buy some EXP bonus cards and catch up with me in no time. Speaking of which, even though leveling up after level 11 is slower, during the closed beta period, the difference of 5 levels doesn't mean much. Level 10 and level 15 players only have a difference of 500 stamina points. While the equipment he obtained could significantly increase his strength in a short period of time, increasing his mastery and increasing his skills seemed to be a long-term solution. Just like the image of Ru Yu and Ruo Li wielding their swords appeared in his mind. Her level isn't much higher than mine, but that's skill. Her fighting mastery must be at least D already. With that in mind, Feng Bujue opened the game menu to look at his masteries. After the previous scenario, his masteries had changed to general ability E, workmanship E, sleuthing E, fighting E, marksmanship F. Only medic was not unlocked. In any case, other than marksmanship, he had increased all 4 of his level F masteries by 1 level. Level E, poor, beginner level. When you reach this level, the success rate of activating a skill of this element is 40%. So far, other than medic, Feng Bujue knew a little about all the other masteries, but none of them were outstanding. This placed a big question mark on his combat ability. Other than that, his title, Cold-Blooded Headcracker, had not changed after the scenario ended, so his special power was still brain concussion. After Feng Bujue finished reading the system checklist, he went to the metal room outside the elevator. This time, there were 3 glass pillars in the room. They were the random skill from clearing the scenario, the optional reward from the terror rating, and the random equipment from the hidden mission. This time, he went to the optional reward section first, and the prompt immediately sounded. Please select your additional reward. 1. Randomly draw a piece of equipment corresponding to your level. 2. 50,000 game coins, upper limit. 3. 4,400 experience points. Looks like as long as I get the embodiment of valor rating after level 10, the game coins will always be at 50,000. Feng Bujue mumbled. In this period of time where game coins were useless, the exchange rate between game coins and RMB was still unclear, so he did not consider it for now. This time, he chose EXP. After gaining 40% of the EXP from his current level, Feng Bujue's EXP had reached 930011000. After clearing one more scenario, he should be able to reach level 12. Then, he walked to the glass pillar and took out the random skill card from it. He looked at it through the menu. Name: Naughty Child's lower whip kick skill card property. Active skill disappears after 3 uses. Whose skill type? Fighting, effect. Ignoring mastery level, there is a 100% chance of tripping any monster that is supposed to be tripped and provoking them to attack you. Consumption: 100 stamina points, prerequisite. Fighting mastery F or level 10 or above. A remark: this is the mischievous blue cat's 3000 kicks. What the hell? Feng Bujue stared at the skill card for a long time. The name and remark that he could not look at directly made him wonder, but the effect of the skill was quite powerful. Feng Bujue thought about it and decided to equip it first. This kind of prank skill was not something that could be sold after the open beta, and if he gave it to someone else, it felt like he was forcing them to do something they did not want him to do. After equipping this skill, at least he had an active skill that he could use in battle. Then, Feng Bujue walked to the last glass pillar, hoping that his luck would not continue. However, He already had a premonition in his heart. On the screen just now, the hidden quest reward was, randomly obtain an excellent grade equipment, but it didn't say, match your level. This meant that the equipment was at least excellent grade, but he might not be able to equip it. The white light materialized, and a piece of equipment that looked like a belt appeared. Feng Bujue's first reaction was, this was probably Batman's tool belt. However, he was wrong. This one was stronger. Name: Echo Armor. Item type: Armor. Quality: excellent defense points. Quite strong element. Buffer. Special effect: none. Equip requirement: general ability C or workmanship. Remark: after collecting some of Black Bolt's whispers, Dr. Doom used this large amount of energy to create this equipment. The user can open the belt to gain an invisible armor of sound. This equipment was very powerful, but unfortunately, Feng Bujue could not equip it at the moment. However, he still placed it in his inventory. After all, his workmanship was already E, and he would try his best to reach level D in the next scenario. Then, he would be able to equip it. Currently, his inventory's capacity was 710, and the items inside were Mario's wrench, Eye of Hostility, Western kitchen knife, baseball bat, flashlight, M1911A1 pistol, and echo armor. Jazz shoes were equipped on his feet, so they did not take up much space in his inventory. The items inside his inventory did not change. It was still a backup flashlight and the puzzle card, monkey. After taking the reward and preparing everything, Feng Bujue returned to the elevator and called Wang Tanji. Xiao Tan handed over the role of team leader to Feng Bujue, and the two of them joined a new team. They were about to enter the second team's survival scenario that night. Chapter 54. Feng Bujue, Level 11, Wang Tanji, Level 11, please select the game mode that your team wishes to join. You have selected Team Survival Mode, Normal. Please confirm. Your team is joining Team Survival Mode, Normal. The number of team members has been randomized, 6. Your team has joined the queue. Currently searching for other readied individuals or teams. Matching complete. Coordinating neural connections. Generating scenario. Downloading, please wait a moment. Welcome to Thriller Paradise. This time, the voice sounded like a middle-aged man, and he was slurring his words. Download complete. You are currently in Team Survival Mode, Normal. This mode provides a scenario introduction, and there is a chance of triggering hidden side missions and special world building. Reward for clearing the scenario. When the reward is calculated, you will gain a 100% increase in EXP from clearing the scenario. Playing the scenario introduction soon. The game will start immediately after that. The image that Feng Bujue saw soon turned into a first-person cinematic movie. It felt like the opening of Call of Duty. The camera showed that he was descending from the sky, but he was not wearing a military uniform. He was still wearing the game's default black long-sleeve t-shirt and long pants. Before him was a blue sky and white clouds. It was a beautiful day. The camera panned down, and he could see a modern city filled with skyscrapers below him. You are a member of a search and rescue team. You were ordered to search for an employee of Audiobook in this city, Professor Ashford. However, due to an accident on the plane, you and your 5 other teammates unfortunately lost all your communication devices and heavy weapons when you parachuted out of the plane. You were then scattered all over the city. What is Audiobook? Isn't it just an inverted umbrella? Feng Bujue looked at the subtitles that appeared before his eyes and said, then, the name of the city can be directly translated from Raccoon City, right? An unknown virus is wreaking havoc in this city of Nukar. Hey, they really did it! This extremely dangerous virus is codenamed Z. Its 4 main characteristics are 100% infectivity, 100% lethality. It can be transmitted through exposed mucous membranes and all bodily fluid. It cannot be transmitted through air or water. F*CK. Wouldn't it be better to just say that it was the T-virus? What see? Who can't tell what's going on with this script? All infected individuals have turned into vampire werewolf zombies. Feng Bujue suddenly froze, and a terrible-looking object flashed through his mind. This monster's basic abilities and habits are no different from a normal zombie, but it possesses the characteristics of both werewolves and vampires. It's called BW Zombie. Huh. Whose silverware can burn the BW zombies' bodies, and the smell of garlic mixed with saliva can have a certain deterrent effect on them. Their mobility and intelligence are extremely low, and they can be killed by cutting off their heads or smashing the back of their head. Aren't they weaker than ordinary zombies? What's the point of this setting? BW zombies hate sunlight, but sunlight will not cause any substantial harm to them. They had a strong sense of smell and reacted to sounds and flashes. Their desire to eat meat had nothing to do with their digestive system. Even if they lost their jaws, esophagus, stomach, and other related organs, they would still continue to try to tear their prey apart and send it into their mouth. All living humans will become their target. This introductory cinematic was rather long, probably because it took some time for them to fall from the sky. After the introduction, the last scene showed Feng Bujue landing on the rooftop of a roadside shop. 1 second later, Feng Bujue's vision overlapped with the screen, and he officially logged into the game. He was not carrying anything like a parachute. It seemed like the system had deleted it to save him the time to remove it. Main quest triggered. The announcement came immediately. This time, the 6 players were scattered around the map before the scenario started. This was the first time that Feng Bujue had encountered something like this. He opened the menu and looked at the main quest. Enter and search Alermu's building to find Professor Ashford. Then, he looked at the team tab. There were 5 names: Wang Tanji, Peerless General Pan Feng, Thousand Slayer Washiong. Names are so hard to choose, and Atobi-sama. Pan Feng and Washiong are in the same team, right? Speaking of which, this scenario is filled with male players, Feng Bujue said. Ah! Suddenly, a muffled groan came from behind Feng Bujue. Feng Bujue turned to look and saw, or rather, a BW zombie. It was limping toward him. The thing's appearance was as follows. Its body was covered in hair, but there was no hair on its hands or face. Not only that, its skin was very white. Its face was human, and its mouth had sharp fangs like a vampire. Other than that, it had the characteristics of a zombie, like ghastly wounds and rotting limbs. The creature moved very slowly indeed, or perhaps the exposure to the sun had made it even more sluggish, and it was stupid enough to give itself away by making meaningless moans. Feng Bujue used a 45-degree angle to look down at the thing for several seconds. Then, he walked half a circle around the monster and stood behind it. The monster limped and slowly turned around to face Feng Bujue. It groaned again and approached him. So slow. Feng Bujue did not even take out a weapon from his inventory. He was too lazy to kill the monster. Instead, he walked toward the door that led to the rooftop. The BW zombie behind him was still approaching, but its speed was slower than Feng Bujue's normal walking speed. Feng Bujue opened the door to the rooftop, and behind it was the staircase that led downstairs. Even though he had some disdain for the power of the monsters in the scenario, he still observed the situation behind the door with caution before he entered. Before he left, Feng Bujue did not forget to close the door. He walked down the stairs, and the first floor was a normal restaurant. The kitchen was opposite the bar counter, and there was a row of tables and chairs by the window that faced the street. There were also some seats by the bar counter. The few tables still had leftover food like sandwiches, fries, bacon, and fried eggs. By then, they had become the flies' feast. When Feng Bujue looked around, he heard another groan. There was another BW zombie behind the bar counter. Its upper body was leaning against the oven, and its lower body had been eaten. Its intestines were all over the floor. Seeing Feng Bujue appear nearby, the monster raised its arms at him and growled several times. The only thing missing was for it to say, "Come into the bowl." Feng Bujue ignored the man. He looked out the window at the street. Within his sight there were indeed a few BW zombies roaming the streets, but they were hiding in the shadows of the buildings, and they moved extremely slowly. It doesn't look that dangerous. Let's do an experiment. He took out the wrench and broke into the storage room. 2 minutes later, he came out with a basket of garlic. Feng Bujue placed the basket on the bar counter and took out a garlic. He put away the wrench and took out the kitchen knife. He cut open the skin of the garlic, plucked a piece of raw garlic, and put it into his mouth to chew. When eating in Thriller Paradise, one could simulate the taste of the food in the real world, and eating too much would cause the player to feel full. However, in real life, the player's stomach would not increase. Be it the taste or the feeling of fullness, they were all illusions created by the nervous system. After the spicy taste bloomed on the tip of his tongue, Feng Bujue walked to the back of the bar counter and approached the BW zombie on the floor. The latter's arms were lowered, and it seemed like it had lost its appetite. It looked like the smell of garlic was indeed effective. Feng Bujue leaned forward and stretched his neck. With a distance of about 1 meter between them, he breathed into the monster's face. The monster started to crawl on the ground with its hands, trying to stay away from Feng Bujue. This scenario is heaven. Feng Bujue's face lit up with excitement. He had decided to farm in this city until he was satisfied. Chapter 55. Being a professional gamer sounded like a desirable job. They could use the game as a career to support themselves and even gain both fame and fortune. Who wouldn't think about it? In 2055, this had indeed become a socially recognized profession. The top talents in the industry had the same influence as famous athletes. The age range of professional gamers was between 14 and 35 years old. Of course, there were younger experts, but some games had age classifications that prevented them from joining. Generally speaking, professional gamers could be simply divided into 2 categories. One was the star-level players, and the other was the ordinary blue-collar level players. Star-level players generally chose to retire around the age of 30. They either became amateurs or retired to the second line. Basically, they were preparing to enter the management of the studio. There were also those who switched to other related positions in the game industry, such as commentators, referees, organizers, and so on. There were even those who made a lot of money and became their own boss. Everyone who entered this industry wanted to become such star-level players. However, many people entered this industry after graduating from junior high school and didn't make a name for themselves until they were 30 years old. In the end, they still had to find a way out in society. These people could be said to have gambled their youth. As for whether they won or lost, only they knew in their hearts. These non-star players were the blue-collar level in this industry. They were the backbone of the industry. Without their support, the studio couldn't operate at all. Those star-level players also needed their solid backing. The most helpless thing in this industry was the cruelty of the competition. Any game that could be popular for a period of time would inevitably have competition. If a game didn't have any way to distinguish between two groups of players, then the game wouldn't attract any studio at all. The number of players that could be attracted would be extremely limited. In terms of multiplayer online games, it didn't matter whether it was a competitive game or not. Even if it was killing monsters, leveling up, and wearing equipment, there was also PK to determine the winner. The simplest and most obvious way for professional gamers to prove their value was to win. Unfortunately, there was only a momentary brilliance in this world. There was no general who would always win. No one could win all the time. The increase in age, the ups and downs of the competitive state, the decline of a certain game, and other factors caused countless players who were once worshipped as gods to gradually fade from people's sight. Those who could retreat at their peak could be counted on one's fingers. The more elite a gaming studio was, the crueler the competition was. What they needed was always young and fresh blood. They needed a group of rookies who maintained an extremely high competitive state and had a competitive and enterprising spirit. The kind of people who could pull down a certain high and mighty god-level player at any time. Simply put, an ambitious genius. For example, Phantom Dawn. This time, Regulation had invested 4 groups of people into Thriller Paradise. Each group had 10 people, and each group had 1 to 2 celebrity players. The rest were basically experienced blue-collared players. Phantom Dawn was the only newbie who was below the age of 20 among the 4 groups. Regulation had high hopes for him, and that was why he was included in the first batch of players to enter Thriller Paradise. The team leader didn't give him any task. He just had to play according to his interests. Who would have thought that in a killing game mode, he would accidentally encounter a group of 3 led by Fearless Brave. This kid didn't know what was good for him and killed all of his seniors. It could be said that he deserved to be given a holiday by the team leader for his willful and reckless actions. Of course, Fearless Brave wasn't considered to be the strongest of them all. Among the many celebrity players at Regulation, be it in terms of past gaming results or popularity, he was not in the top 10. Even though his group had successfully taken the title of the first player to reach level 20 in the closed beta, Regulation's real power was far greater than that. Currently, these 4 groups could only be called pioneering teams, the strongest group of players at the studio. They had only registered their accounts and locked onto their IDs, but they hadn't come online again. In other words, Regulation's real experts had not been officially assigned to this project yet. The upper management had already made the decision to wait and see. At least, they would wait until the Dream Company opened up the currency exchange and payment service before they decided whether to send in their best talent. Now that I've said so much, you might be confused. How did I get there? What about Fongbujua? What about the scenario at Nuka City? Let me use these 3 paragraphs to get back to the topic. Speaking of studios, this time, Fongbujue's scenario had members from a studio as well. However, he did not belong to a big sect like Regulation. He was a third-rate studio owner, manager, and player like I mentioned earlier. He was a Tobi-sama. Alright, I believe you have guessed it already. Indeed, his studio was called Hyodii. Tobi-sama was 23 in real life, and he had just graduated from university last year. His father owned a factory, so his family had quite a bit of savings, so he could build one. After all, the cost of opening a gaming studio was not that high. He only needed to rent a place and buy a few gaming hubs. The investment in manpower was negligible, and the employees were all his friends from his school days. Furthermore, Tobi-sama only had 3 employees under him. One of them was hard to choose a name, who was currently in the same scenario as him, and the other 2 had nicknames hard to choose a name and hard to choose a name. Even though Tobi-sama had seriously requested for his 3 friends to use nicknames like Baireisai and Shinobi, he was mercilessly rejected. When he threatened them with his salary, he was rejected by Aruba. Their studio knew that they had to work 2 shifts, so they were split into 2 groups. Currently, the other 2 were in between games, so they had gone out for supper. Tobi-sama's in-game appearance was a fair-skinned man with a pretty face. He was thin, and he did not look that different from his real appearance. However, the changes to his face were more obvious. Hard to choose a name had a medium build, and he was slightly shorter than Tobi-sama. His in-game appearance was similar to his name, giving off an unkempt feeling. He not only did not make himself look handsome, he even had a bald head, saying that he wanted to experience the feeling of being bald in the game. Tobi-sama's title seemed to be a form of sarcasm from the system. He was called One Blade Master. His weapon of choice was a katana, and it looked like the weapon used by small fries in wuxia dramas. It was of normal quality and had no special effects or stats, but at least it was a proper weapon. Different from Atobi-sama's random title, real hard to come up with a name was much more recognizable. It had 4 words, outwardly strong but inwardly weak. His bald head formed a great contrast to his terror-point. The man did not even have a proper weapon. His backpack was filled with 2 baseball bats and a rusted iron pipe. It was unclear where he had picked them up from. They were quite lucky. The 2 had landed 1 street away from each other, so they would meet up soon. The 2 looked unreliable, but they had their own strength. If they knew nothing about gaming, why would they start a studio? Therefore, Atobi-sama made the correct decision. He ignored the quest and found a gun shop to arm himself. Looking at the city, it was clear that the scenario was set on the land of the evil American Empire. Therefore, there was an 80% chance that there would be a gun shop in the city. Even if they did not have any heavy weapons, they had standard pistols, shotguns, rifles, and so on. They had plenty of ammo, so they were all valuable. The 2 moved down the street, and they ran into BW zombies that wandered in groups of 2s and 3s. However, they posed little threat. If they were too lazy to fight them, they would circle around them. If they could not avoid them, they would give them a headshot. Even though these monsters would move faster when they were close to their biting range, as long as they were careful and did not get surrounded by 3 or more monsters at the same time, they would be easy to kill. After walking 2 streets, Atobi-sama entered a phone booth. He picked up the phone, but the line was different. In fact, even if it was connected, he did not know who to call. Was he supposed to call 911? The main reason he was there was to look through the phone book. After searching for 3 to 5 minutes, Atobi-sama successfully found the address of the nearest gun shop. He and hard to choose a name, I decided to call him by his nickname, picked up their pace to head there. After another 10 minutes of walking, they were close to their destination, but they noticed something strange. There were about 30 BW zombie carcasses lying on the street. Each of the carcasses had their heads smashed open, and the carcasses stretched all the way to the door of the gun shop. In the middle of the street in front of the shop, in broad daylight, there was a large ice bucket with the Gatorade logo. The bucket was filled with red liquid, and there were many empty plastic blood bags littered the ground beside it. The thick stench of blood was so thick that even a human nose could smell it from afar. 2 speakers were placed next to the blood bucket, and they were playing Matador March loudly. Based on the drag marks on the ground, they appeared to have been dragged out from a music shop across the street. An electrical box by the road had been taken apart. It was hard to see what was inside, but in any case, the speaker's power cord extended all the way there. What's going on? Mingzi asked. Atobi-sama had no idea what was going on, but before he could answer, a BW zombie flew out from a corner behind the blood bucket. Then, a man covered in blood walked out from there. He had a sharp knife in one hand and a wrench in the other. On each of his shoulders was a string of garlic. The 2 strings of garlic formed an X before him, and they were both dyed red. Following the rhythm of the matador, he danced a dance that was similar to the dance of the Axe Gang in Kung Fu Hustle. His lips were chewing on an unknown white object like chewing gum. He walked briskly toward the BW zombie. Then, he chopped madly at the head of the monster that had not gotten up from the ground, shattering its bones and sending blood splattering everywhere. After killing the monster, he seemed to realize something. He suddenly straightened up and turned around. He saw Atobi-sama and Mingzi standing there dumbfounded. The 2 of them met Feng Bujue's gaze for 2 seconds before shouting at the same time and turning to run. Run! Run! Feng Bujue did not waste time and gave chase. He actually wanted to yell, "Why are you running? I'm a player!" But since his mouth was full of garlic, he could not raise his voice. On the other hand, when Mingzi saw the monster chasing after them, his terror points skyrocketed. As he ran, he told Atobi-sama, It's over, it's over, it's over. If this guy catches up to us, we're dead meat. This is all your fault. Why did you go to the gun shop for no reason? There really is a mini-boss planted at the entrance of the gun shop. Atobi-sama kept turning back to look at the approaching Fongbujue. What does that have to do with me? How would I know about this? He turned back to look. By the way, this guy seems to be running faster than us. I noticed that already. He's impossibly fast. Ming-Zi grumbled. Fongbujue, who was about 20 meters away from them, heard their conversation. He thought, of course, I have jazz shoes, and you two want to compete with me in running? Unexpectedly, at this moment, the two people in front suddenly said in unison, "Let's split up." At the next junction, they split up and ran in different directions. Fongbujue gasped internally. These two are quite good at strategy. He did not think too much about it. He turned left and chased after one of them. That was Atobi-sama. This is bad. I didn't make him hesitate at all. Atobi-sama mumbled to himself. Instead of chasing after an obvious target like that baldy, he came straight for me. It must be my handsomeness that got me killed. Seeing Fongbujue getting closer and closer, Atobi-sama's terror points rose. He knew that he was about to be caught. Instead of being killed by this mini-boss from behind, he might as well turn back and take the risk. With that in mind, he suddenly stopped moving. He raised his padao before him and swung it at Fongbujue, who was charging at him at high speed. When Fongbujue reached him, Atobi-sama realized that the padao in his hand was unable to move. His movement had been stopped by the system. Fongbujue stopped before him and gasped for air. Glaring at him, he stuttered, I am, we're on the same side. You're a beep. The word idiot was censored by the system. Theoretically speaking, Fongbujue should not have been able to turn his intention into reality, but since there was a censor, it meant that he did not mean it to be insulting. It was just a sarcastic tone. Atobi-sama collapsed to the ground. His face was blanched and his lips twitched. Ha. I'm sorry. He apologized. Chapter 56. Since Fongbujue did not chase after Ming-Name, the latter slowed down when he saw that there was no one behind him. Several seconds later, Ming-Name stopped and turned around to look. He saw that Fongbujue had caught up to Atobi-sama. He thought that Atobi was going to be killed instantly, but the two did not fight. 2 minutes later, the two walked back side by side. Atobi-sama even waved his arm at Ming-In, as if to signal that he was fine. Soon, the three of them returned to the street outside the gun shop. Fongbujue turned off the sound and explained the situation to them. So, after some experiments, I've basically grasped the main characteristics of these BW zombies. Even though the opening cinematic mentioned it already, I think it's better for me to explain it to you in more detail. First, they have a strong aversion to the smell of garlic, similar to how we feel when we smell tear gas. The effect of raw garlic is normal, but after chewing it in the mouth, the halitosis is very effective. Ming-Name looked at the blood on Fongbujue and the 2 cloves of garlic that were dyed red on his chest and asked, "Big brother, I've been meaning to ask this. You're covered in blood, aren't you afraid of being infected?" Fongbujue pointed at his face, which was relatively clean. "Just be careful not to let the monster's bodily fluids get into my eyes and mouth." He pointed at his clothes and continued, "About this. It might look exaggerated, but it's not all the monster's blood. When I poured the blood into the bucket earlier, some of it got on my body." He then took out a plastic bag that was filled to the brim and placed it on the ground. It was filled with clean garlic. "These 2 cloves on me are the last line of defense against bites, so naturally, the garlic used for eating is stored inside the bag. Go and find a bag each and share some. As long as you have garlic in your mouth during battle, the monsters won't be able to resist." I'll take one. 1 clove can be split into 6 or 7 cloves. If we don't have enough, we can ask you for more, Mingname replied. Atobi-sama replied without hesitation, I don't need it, thank you. The two of you don't seem to like the smell of garlic very much. Fong Bujue said earnestly, do you know that garlic has the effect of turning stone into gold when it comes to clear soup noodles? I don't know, they answered with one voice. Ha! Fong Bujue used a very vulgar expression to spit out a foul breath at their faces. We're not monsters. What are you doing? Fong Bujue immediately said. Then, continued to talk about the characteristics of BW zombies. That's a quick turnaround, sunlight will slow them down. Fong Bujue continued his narration. Her movements were as slow as a magical girl's transformation. By the time she finished stripping, oh no, by the time she attacked, I would have finished reciting 2 lines of tongue twisters. You're quite knowledgeable, Fong Bujue glanced at the dead bodies on the street. Even though decapitation will immobilize their bodies, their heads will continue to survive. Based on my experiments, only by destroying the back of their heads or blowing up half of their brains will they be killed. As he spoke, he took out a shotgun from his inventory. He looked at the weapon with admiration. This is a Winchester that I found at the gun shop. It's quite an effective weapon. Even if it can't hit the head at close range, it can create a large hole in other parts of the body. It's much more effective than a handgun. Yes, the gun shop. Atobi-sama widened his eyes. I almost forgot about that. Let's go scavenge for equipment first. He waved at Fong Bujue and then rushed into the gun shop with Ming Ming. The two of them were players who were seriously lacking in equipment. They had not seen any excellent quality equipment before. For them, being able to upgrade their cold weapons into firearms was already a big breakthrough. For someone like Fong Bujue, who had 4 excellent quality equipment at such a low level, and one of them was still in his inventory because he could not equip it, other people would have a hard time imagining it. Atobi-sama and Mingname rushed into the gun shop and saw a mess. The racks on the wall were mostly empty, and there were many gun parts on the shelves and floor. The door behind the counter had been ransacked as well. Fong Bujue walked in behind them and continued in his calm tone. In terms of setting, after the virus broke out in the city, the gun shop should have been emptied. In terms of game difficulty, we shouldn't have been given too many choices in terms of weapons. Atobi-sama did not seem to hear Fong Bujue. He excitedly picked up the 2 pistols on the ground and placed them in his inventory. Then he picked up a TMP and said with a smile, "We're rich." Ming Ming tossed out a baseball bat and a rusty iron pipe from his backpack. He also picked up 2 pistols and put them away. Then, he slung a UMP-45 submachine gun over his shoulder. His face was beaming with joy. The two of them had obtained a few normal quality weapons, and they felt like they had suddenly become rich. Honestly, it was quite shameful. Compared to real professional players, Hyodai and Mingname could only be said to be pseudo-professional players. Their mentality and skill level were still amateurs. With Fong Bujue's reminder, the two were reminded of something important. They awkwardly took out the pistols that were stuffed into their pockets. They looked at the caliber, found the bullets, and picked up some of them. When the 3 returned to the street, another 4 to 5 BW zombies had been attracted. Fong Bujue suggested that they use these monsters as live targets to practice their shooting and familiarize themselves with the guns. The two were flustered and took a long time to figure out how to shoot. After they successfully fired, they realized that they couldn't hit their targets from 10 meters away. The bullets had flown off to who knows where. However, when the distance was shortened to 5 meters, the success rate was much higher. After dealing with these monsters, Fong Bujue said, "Where was I earlier? Oh right, the next characteristic is..." He paused to arrange his thoughts. The vampire's thirst for blood is also reflected in these BW zombies. They are attracted by the smell of blood. Of course, it has to be the blood of a normal person who hasn't been infected. In this regard, I believe they use their sense of smell to differentiate between the two. These BW zombies' sense of smell is definitely not as good as a pure werewolf's, but it is definitely better than a normal zombie. If a living person like me appears within 50 meters of them, they don't need to rely on sight to discover me. Normal human blood that is exposed to the air can be sniffed out from a distance of 1 kilometer, and they have a strong sense of attraction. That can't be right. This city is filled with murder scenes, and they can distinguish a bucket of human blood mixed in with the smell? Atobi-sama asked as he looked at the bucket filled with blood. That's normal. One of the signs of a sensitive sense of smell is the separation of smell. For example, dogs like bloodhounds can analyze the composition of smell on a molecular level. Fong Bujue replied. For example, if you smell a pile of feces, at most, you will know that it stinks, but if a creature with a sensitive sense of smell sniffs it, they will know what the person who pooped ate yesterday. Now I just want to know why your use of this term wasn't censored, Atobi-sama said. This means that under normal circumstances, the word feces is not viewed as an indecent term by the system, it is just a noun. Fong Bujue said. Based on my prediction, in this game, under certain circumstances, this item will become a topic that has to be brought up. For example, in certain random scenarios, the players might drown in. I can't hear anything. I can't hear anything. Atobi-sama quickly covered his ears and mumbled repeatedly. Fong Bujue shrugged and did not finish this disgusting topic. Instead, he changed the topic. Since I've run into you, things will be easier. The time in this scenario is 2:30 p.m. You can use this area as your base and try your best to farm as many monsters as you can. After all, the gun shop is just next door. Even if there are not many guns left, at least there are enough bullets. I'll go search for the others immediately. I'll bring them here when I find them. He raised his head to look at the sky. Whether I find them or not, I'll be back before the sun sets. He was reminded of something. Oh, by the way, sound has a certain effect of attracting monsters. After I leave, you can turn on the sound system again. Wait a minute, Mingming said. I've been meaning to ask since the beginning. This place. His eyes moved to the ice buckets, empty blood bags, and sound system. How did you manage to create all this on your own? The general process is, before coming to the gun shop, I went to a hospital 2 streets away. At the time, I wanted to go in to see if there were any items like medicine, but I accidentally discovered that human blood can attract monsters. After searching the hospital, I arrived here and decided to use this place as a temporary base. Therefore, I went to the nearby supermarket to grab a trolley and slid all the way to the hospital. Then, I killed my way in, found the blood bank, broke down the door, and grabbed about 10 packs of blood from the freezer. I placed them on the trolley and brought them back. Then, I moved the ice buckets from the opposite shop and used blood to fill them up. The sound system was something I went to the opposite shop to get. 1. Sound can attract monsters, and 2. The frequency of monsters coming is not that high, so waiting for them to come is quite boring. Fong Bujue said quickly. In any case, you can stay here and farm without worry. The time limit of this scenario is very loose, so we should make use of this chance to increase our mastery level as much as possible and earn more skill points. After saying all that, he waved his sleeves and turned to leave. The 2 professional players stood there with their mouths agape as they watched the man walk away. Chapter 57. Compared to Fong Bujue, Wang Tanji was not as relaxed. As a simple-minded person, after he landed, he did not think too much about it and rushed toward the main quest. Even though he was simple-minded, his execution was not bad. Soon, he found a map of the city from a newspaper stall and found the address of a Lerbmo company. Xiao Tan thought that his other teammates would be heading there as well, so if he could reach the building as soon as possible, he would be able to meet up with them. Along the way, he killed quite a number of monsters, and the closer he got to the building, the higher the number of zombies. Perhaps it was because the sun was still up, even though Xiao Tan was alone, he managed to control his terror points. Comparing these BW zombies to the normal zombies in the movies, it was hard to tell which one was scarier. The key was that their movement was too slow, and they did not give off the feeling of imminent danger. Walking past a few monsters that weren't a threat in broad daylight. It was similar to strolling around a comic convention. Perhaps things would only change after the sky darkened. At around 2:30 p.m., when Feng Bujue left the base that he had created to look for Xiao Tan had already arrived at the building of Audiobook Company. The building was 52 stories tall, and there was a large iron sign on the roof, Audiobook. It was similar to the Avengers building, and it gave off an air of arrogance and grandeur. The fact that the company could place their logo on the roof meant that the whole building belonged to them. From the introduction of the scenario, this Audiobook Company was undeniably the core organization that created the virus. Only in the troubled land of the United States would there be such an anti-human armed group that was more powerful than the government and had technology that rivaled the Protoss. Wang Tongji held the baseball bat and walked slowly. The dried blood stains on the bat meant that the person who wielded it did not hold back when facing these monsters. In terms of fighting ability, Dr. Wang might not be weaker than Feng Bujue. To put it bluntly, with their current in-game character level and physical ability, the movements that they could perform were still within the range of a normal person. There were at least 100 BW zombies wandering in front of the building. When these monsters saw a living being, they started to gather. A large area before Xiao Tan was covered by the shadow of the building. The BW zombies moved faster than when they were under the sun. Their movement speed was close to the level of the monsters in the early zombie movies. Of course, compared to the zombies in the later movies that could run, jump, open doors, drive, and even use of firearms, these monsters were still weak. At this time, Xiao Tan was slightly afraid. Looking at the large group of white-faced man-eating corpses with long hair rushing toward him, he might not be able to kill them all even if he swung the baseball bat in his hand until it broke. Moreover, he also noticed a very strange thing. There wasn't even a single BW zombie that had been killed in the vicinity. If a teammate entered the building before him, then, when he or they killed their way in, they would have to pass through these monsters. No matter how fast they were, they would have to kill at least 7 or 8 of them before they could break through, right? But now, there was not a single non-moving corpse in front of the building. Looks like I'm the first to arrive. Xiao Tan mumbled to himself as he started to retreat. Since there was most likely no teammate in the building, there was no need for him to rush in. It was better to wait outside first. Thinking of this, he decided to temporarily withdraw from this open space. Unexpectedly, as soon as he turned his head, he triggered a flag. A gatekeeper-level boss appeared in front of him. Xiao Tan's back was facing the building, and in the direction he was facing, about 100 meters away from him in the middle of the street, there stood a huge black shadow of about 2.5 meters tall. Xiao Tan did not know when this guy appeared and how. But he was very clear that this was not a monster that could be killed with a baseball bat. This monster's upper body had completely turned into a werewolf, covered with a dark brown mane. There was no exposed skin on its face and hands. Its head was that of a wolf, and its fingertips were sharp claws. He didn't find any vampiric characteristics on its body, but it did have zombie characteristics. There was a large wound on its left chest, through which he could see the inside of its torso. The problem was, looking through the hole, he couldn't see any organs. Behind a few ribs, you could vaguely see a bloody human head. This mini-boss should be called a zombie werewolf because it did not have any vampire characteristics. Perhaps it was because of that it was not affected by the sun, and in terms of size, It had surpassed the limits of a normal human being. The zombie werewolf strode forward, and the pressure from its appearance and presence was self-explanatory. Xiao Tan's terror points continued to rise, and cold sweat dripped down his face. However, he was not going to stand there and wait for death. He could not head toward the building anymore. If he faced this boss directly, he would not stand a chance, so he decided to take a detour to the side. Xiao Tan turned and ran to the side. The direction he was running toward was a slope that gradually led downward. If he continued to run, he would reach the entrance to the underground parking lot. When he noticed it, the wall around him had already exceeded the height that he could jump over. It looked like running down the slope was his only option. Seeing that he was running, the zombie werewolf naturally chased after him. Thankfully, this monster was not a pure werewolf. It did not seem to know how to run on all fours. Instead, it used 2 legs to chase after him, so its running speed was not that fast. However, compared to the BW zombies, who moved like they were taking a stroll after a meal, Xiao Tan was unable to increase the distance between him and the werewolf. Soon, Xiao Tan was close to the entrance of the underground parking lot. Looking at the height of the railing, it looked like he could jump over it easily. It was not going to stop him. However, the problem was, he realized that there was no light in the underground parking lot. His legs continued to move forward, and his hand reached into his backpack to take out the flashlight. At that moment, another horrible scene flashed before his eyes. He noticed that not far behind the railing, there were some moving shadows. Then, a scary scene appeared before his eyes. Initially, Xiao Tan only saw a few shadows, but as he got closer, he saw more clearly. The dark parking lot was filled with BW zombies. There were so many monsters hiding in places where the sunlight could not reach. Xiao Tan was shocked, but there was no time for him to digest this shock. He could only choose between the dense BW zombies and the powerful werewolf zombie. Of course, with the current situation, he would definitely be torn into pieces if he rushed into the darkness. Therefore, he had to turn back and face this mini-boss. With Xiao Tan's ability, it would be difficult to kill the werewolf zombie. However, if he wanted to run away without caring about the cost, there were 2 ways. First, he could use slow sand. Second, he could use the special ability given by Panicked Ambusher Retreat / Name, Retreat / Special Ability Type, Active, Consumption. 30% of maximum stamina points, effect, can be activated the moment the target is hit. The user will immediately move backwards at high speed, creating a distance of at least 10 meters between the user and the target. No cooldown, can only be used when using a cold weapon with a blade. Remark, I jumped out again. I'm back. I jumped out again. What do you think? Hit me, idiot. The first method should be able to help Xiao Tan escape from danger. It should be able to shake off the monster in 1 minute. However, the use of a slow sand in this scenario was self-explanatory. This was a scenario that focused more on combat. When facing a large number of BW zombies or when facing the final boss, using this item might be able to turn the tables. It would be such a waste to use it now. However, the second method was much riskier. To use this skill to escape, he would have to circle behind the werewolf zombie in an instant or at least have his back facing the werewolf, and he would have to successfully slash the werewolf's body. The memory of Brother Long being slapped away by the strengthened zombie was still fresh in his mind. Xiao Tan did not think that the werewolf zombie before him was weaker than that monster. In terms of level, the average level of the players in this scenario was almost double that of that monster. Ignoring the factor of numbers, one could only imagine how powerful the monsters were. Just as Xiao Tan was hesitating, the werewolf reached him. Just as it was about to pounce, the monster suddenly stopped. It turned around and completely ignored Wang Tongji's presence. It turned back to look in another direction cautiously, and a low growl came from its throat. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of heavy metal boots hitting the ground came, and two elongated shadows walked down the slope. Since they were facing away from the light, Xiao Tan could not see their faces clearly, but from the monster's reaction, they were probably players or some kind of hostile NPC. There was a hero in Hebei, the general was Pan Feng. With the ambition of the universe in his heart, he hid millions of soldiers in his belly. Pangu came from the mortal world, and the vermilion bird was his name. His voice was mighty, and a smile made light of heroes. One of the figures recited a limerick-level poem and walked to the front just like that. The man did not have any outstanding features. He looked to be around 30 and had a beard. He held a mountain-splitting axe in his hand, and it was very eye-catching. Since he started playing the game, this was the first time that Wang Tongji had seen someone use a weapon that was taller than a person. It was not an exaggeration to call it majestic. "Little brother, don't be afraid." The one who spoke was naturally the man nicknamed Pan Feng. "With me and brother Hua here, you'll be fine." That Thousand Slayers Hua Xiong was also holding a long weapon in his hand. It was a long spear. His age seemed to be about the same as Pan Wushuang, and he also had a beard. "Brother Pan is right. Little brother, just wait. There is no need to be afraid of such a monster. I can take its life as easily as slaughtering pigs or dogs." At that moment, the only thought in Wang Tongji's mind was, "These two uncles have reached the terminal stage of Chunibyu." Chapter 58. That was what Wang Tongji thought, but the zombie werewolf was different. It did not care whether the players were delusional or not, it only cared about the player's strength. As a gatekeeper boss that did not have high intelligence, the zombie werewolf actually gave up on the prey in front of it. It turned around and stared attentively and vigilantly at the two slowly approaching targets that were still a certain distance away from it. This went to show how powerful the two players were. From the way they addressed each other, Xiao Tan guessed that they were Peerless General Pan Feng and Thousand Men Slayer Hua Xiong. Since the beginning of the scenario, the players were separated, and the players' names and titles were no longer displayed above their heads. The team tab only showed their name, level, and whether they were still alive or not. Therefore, Xiao Tan had no idea what their titles were, and he could not use that to gauge their power level. However, since these two had volunteered to save him and dared to say something like that, taking down this boss should not be a problem. Two generals," Xiao Tan said rather awkwardly. "There are many BW zombies down here. Why don't we lure this mini-boss up?" When he reached the latter part of his sentence, his mouth suddenly fell open and he screamed in shock. Don't worry, he was not bitten. Even though there were 5 or 6 zombies in the parking lot behind them, they had not reached Xiao Tan's side. Actually, there was no need to pay too much attention to those zombies because they were blocked by the horizontal railing. Due to their low intelligence, they did not know how to climb over the railing and were using their ribs to push against the railing. The reason Xiao Tan screamed was because he saw something unbelievable. General Pan leaped high into the air with the axe raised above his head. His body dropped, and the axe fell at an angle. It did not look fast, but the angle and movement of his attack was enough to make it impossible for the large zombie werewolf to evade. The monster howled angrily and raised its claws to block. Unexpectedly, the moment the weapon in Pan Wushuang's hand chopped down on the monster's arm, it suddenly increased its speed. The axe blade flashed with a cold light, as fast as lightning, faster than a meteor, severed the monster's arm in half. Just like that, one of the zombie wolfman's giant arms was chopped off and sent flying. Before it could even let out a howl of pain, Hua Xiong's spear had already arrived. This attack was even faster than the zombie wolfman's, so fast that the zombie wolfman's knee was pierced. His left arm was chopped off by the axe and his right knee was pierced by the spearhead. The zombie werewolf's body was top-heavy to begin with, and its upper body was obviously bulkier. After receiving these 2 blows, it immediately lost its balance and fell to the right, landing heavily on the ground. In the next second, a cold light flashed in the wolf's eyes. With a bang, the axe chopped into the ground and blood splashed out. Then, the wolf's head slowly rolled down the slope of the road. Xiao Tan was completely dumbfounded. The two of them had defeated a mini-boss within 3 moves. How powerful were they? It was hard to imagine that they were only 2 levels higher than him. Ah! The groan of the BW zombie behind him brought him back to reality. Xiao Tan turned back to look. There were already more than 10 zombies gathered behind the railing, and deeper into the dark parking lot, there were countless shadows of zombies. "Little brother, why don't you follow us back to the surface?" Pan Feng asked. Xiao Tan replied instantly, Okay. Let's find a place without monsters first." He hurried up, and when he passed the zombie wolfman, he could not help but lower his head to glance at the monster's headless body. After leaving the base, Feng Bujue was heading toward a Lerbmu's building. He knew that was the place where he had the highest chance of finding his teammate. At the moment, he could only hope that Xiao Tan and the other 2 players would not blindly enter the building before he arrived. He was not in a hurry to save Professor Ashford from the main mission. Honestly, it did not matter if the professor died because the system did not say that the professor's death meant that the scenario had failed. This was team survival mode. Only when all the players were wiped out would the scenario fail. The death of a plot character would at most increase the difficulty of the scenario or change the ending of the story. Feng Bujue had already killed more than 50 BW zombies when he was alone. Actually, if he wanted to, he could have killed more, but he had to conduct various experiments to test the reaction of the monsters, and that took up some of his time. After all that, his marksmanship mastery had risen from F to E, but his fighting mastery was still at E. It looked like using 2 weapons that were not real weapons to decapitate the monsters while dancing would not raise his fighting mastery to D level. He had to adjust his train of thought. Feng Bujue could not help but be reminded of Passing Rain and Passing Rain. He was reminded of her clean, and elegant movement. He was indeed unable to do that at the moment. Perhaps when he could, his fighting mastery would reach D level. Of course, fighting monsters that were as slow as crabs would not allow him to train to such a level. At the very least, he would have to fight against monsters that were as strong as him, or even stronger. Only then would he have a chance to raise his fighting mastery. Currently, Feng Bujue's top priority was to equip Echo Armor. He knew that it would not be so easy to raise his general mastery to C, but he should be able to give D workmanship mastery a try. After all, it was only a difference of 1 level. Along the way, he was thinking about how to make use of the freedom provided by the scenario to gain more benefit. If he saw any monsters, he would avoid them. Soon, he was approaching the Lerbmu building. He was only a few blocks away from it. At that moment, Feng Bujue noticed the increase in the number of BW zombies around him, and he saw some of the zombies that had been killed. So, this guy went to do an autopsy on the zombies with great interest. He first squatted next to a corpse, looked at the smashed skull and the liquid on the ground, carefully observed the wound, and also slightly checked the other wounds on the corpse, making it look like a police detective investigating the scene of a murder. Was this done by a baseball bat? He thought. First, 1 hit from the front, and then 2 hits from the side and back. Could it be Xiao Tan? He stood up, picked up the wrench, and used it to knock down a monster that was close to him. He stepped on its chest and punched through its skull. But a baseball bat seems to be an easy weapon to get. That name is so hard to choose, seems to have several of them. He thought. Then again, I cannot rule out the possibility that the other 2 players are using baseball bats as weapons. With this thought in mind, he walked forward. Unexpectedly, before he could take a few steps, he saw 7 or 8 corpses lying close to each other in the distance. All of them had their heads chopped off, and the heads were still moving. Because they had no trachea, they could not make any sound. The heads that were chopped off only opened their mouths, and their jaws kept making chewing motions. This should not be his doing. Chapter 59. Around 3 o'clock, inside the Audiobook building, Pan Feng and Hua Xiong were leading Xiao Tan all the way to the top floor. Inside the building, the elevator from the ground floor to the 52nd floor had stopped working. The fire escape on the ground floor had also been blown up, but the elevators to the other floors were still working. They took several elevators from the first floor to the 7th floor, then took the stairs from the 7th floor to the 3rd floor, and then took another elevator from the 10th floor. After a few twists and turns, they finally reached the 42nd floor. Along the way, they were attacked by 2 mini-boss-level monsters, but in front of Pan Feng and Hua Xiong's combat power, the mini-boss-level monsters were unable to fight back. They were chopped to the ground within 2 to 3 minutes. Not to mention those ordinary BW zombies, they were easily dealt with like cutting melons and vegetables. Xiao Tan followed behind them. It was an eye-opening experience, and he was amazed. As for the battle, he didn't even have a chance to intervene. He felt like a mafia boss leading 2 gold medal fighters to clear out the area. He could only watch the whole time. Brothers! Xiao Tan was on the stairs between the 42nd and 43rd floor. He finally couldn't help but ask, "Are you planning to kill your way from the ground floor to the top floor and back again from the top floor?" No, Hua Xiong replied. "We are going to save Professor Ashford." Xiao Tan heard this and paused. That? I don't know if it's too late for me to say this. When I was on the 1st floor, I glanced at the building's schematic. The research institute is built underground, not upstairs. Logically speaking, since they had already killed their way to this level, the other party should have replied, "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Surprisingly, the two of them were calm and composed. Hua Xiong turned around and laughed. "Haha, little brother, we know that the research facility is underground, but the doctor might not be in the research facility." Xiao Tan thought, if the professor isn't in the research institute, where would he be? He can't be hiding in the toilet, right? According to the routine of science fiction movies, after a virus outbreak, researchers like this would generally find a relatively safe isolation facility to protect themselves and then try to find a way to control the virus or call for help. The top floor of the building was only marked as an office area on the diagram. If Dr. Ashford had been there, he would have been eaten already. Although he had doubts in his heart, Xiao Tan didn't say it out loud. After all, he didn't need to fight monsters. He just needed to walk behind them. Even if it was proven that he was taking a wrong path, he could just follow these 2 uncles and kill them. A few minutes earlier, Feng Bujue had also successfully entered the building. Along the way, he had observed the wounds on the bodies and the footprints on the blood. He had basically deduced that there were 2 people with Xiao Tan. One used a heavy weapon with a blade, and the other used something like a spear. Moreover, the 2 of them were very strong in combat. They could basically kill all the monsters in one hit. Due to the strong performance of the 3 leading the way, Feng Bujue's path forward was much easier. After entering the building, the number of monsters he encountered was very limited. He looked at the map of the building and then headed toward the Underground Research Institute. He didn't expect the 3 to be heading toward the top floor, so he naturally thought that his teammates had gone down the stairs. Therefore, Feng Bujue found the elevator that led to the lower floor in one of the corridors and took it. The elevator was very spacious. To be honest, it was quite similar to the login lobby. However, there was no mirror wall behind it, and there was no touch screen beside it. There were some blood stains in the elevator, but there were no bodies or body parts. Since the elevator could only go between the first floor and the Underground Research Institute, there were only 5 or 6 buttons on the control panel. Feng Bujue pressed the button for the underground floor, and then the button to close the door. Not long after, the elevator started to move. Based on the battle records that he had seen earlier, He felt that in an enclosed environment, monsters like the BW zombies would have a hard time escaping from the clutches of Pan Hua and Wang Zhong. However, he still held the wrench in his hand, in case there were any monsters that managed to escape. Even though the possibility of that happening was very small, just as the elevator door was about to open, there was a sudden wave of zombie screams. This caught Feng Bujue off guard. He saw an arm reach in from outside the door, then another. Before the door fully opened, 3 to 4 zombies rushed into the room. Looking back, there were about 20 to 30 monsters in the corridor. Most of them were wearing white lab coats and security uniforms. Saliva dripped from their mouths as they groaned. Their bodies emitted the rotting smell of corpses. Even though Feng Bujue was ambushed, he reacted calmly and correctly. As he bit on a piece of garlic that was already in his mouth, he took out the kitchen knife. With the help of the wrench in his other hand, he aimed for the head of the monster closest to him. After quickly killing a few monsters, he discovered something very shocking. The monsters that were rushing towards him at this moment were just ordinary zombies. Their faces were not obviously pale, their mouths did not have sharp teeth, and their bodies did not have werewolf hair. The key point was, they weren't afraid of garlic. This sudden situation put Feng Bujue at a great disadvantage. He initially thought that there would not be that many monsters, but there were so many of them, and they had forced him into a small space like the elevator where he had no way to escape. To make matters worse, the garlic had lost its deterrent effect, and these normal zombies moved much faster than the BW zombies on the ground. In terms of strength and speed, they were no different from normal humans. Feng Bujue didn't have slow sand anymore. In the previous scenario, he had used this item on Roderick Usher's soul to block the attack of a large number of telekinetic objects. Therefore, he was helpless. If it was an ordinary person who was blocked by 20 zombies in the elevator, then the best result for him would probably be to commit suicide under the circumstances. However, Feng Bujue didn't even have the time to take out his gun. He held the weapon in both hands and waved it around. Relying on the passive effect of brain concussion, he barely managed to hold his ground. However, the monster's arms and the limited space inside the elevator made it difficult for him to hit their heads every time. As he expected, it didn't take long for him to be bitten, and it wasn't just one spot. The pain was not intense, but he knew that he might have been infected. After clearing the zombies before him, Feng Bujue was already in the corridor. Behind him were more than 20 dead bodies, and the blood flowed like a river. He looked at the wounds on his body. There were 2 on his arms and 2 on his leg. There were 4 wounds in total. Other than the clothes around the sensitive parts, the other parts of the player's clothing could be damaged. As long as the damage was less than 10% of the whole set, the system could delay or not fix it. Therefore, at that moment, Feng Bujue's sleeves and pants around his calves were exposed with wounds that had been bitten by zombies. The status next to his life points showed that he was sick. This proved that he had been infected. Feng Bujue sighed. He took out the Winchester from his inventory, loaded it, and continued to move forward. He had no idea why there were normal zombies at the lab, but he knew that the mutation after infection would take time. Before he felt the flu or fever, there was still some time left. He wanted to search the lab to see if there were any serum or something like that. At the same time, he wanted to check if Xiao Tan and the other 2 were there. If they weren't, it meant that the 3 had mysteriously gone up the building. If they were, there had to be a reason for the scene at the elevator door. At the same time, at the entrance of the gun shop, Atobi-sama and Ming-Zi went to move a large sofa and placed it in the middle of the road. The 2 sat on it and used the BW zombies that were slowly approaching as target practice. Of course, even though they were playing, they still had to be careful. After all, with their shooting skills, it was difficult to hit a zombie's head at such a distance. Therefore, whenever a zombie had its leg broken or was knocked to the ground, the 2 of them would go over to check whether it was dead or not. If it was still alive, they would shoot it in the head. The guns at the gun shop were all F-grade, and the equipment requirement was even lower than the M1911A1 that Feng Bujue had picked up when he was level 5. Obviously, in a scenario above level 10, the restrictions on the use of guns were relaxed. Those who had not unlocked the marksmanship mastery had more chances to unlock it. Hey, look, what's that? Ming Ming suddenly saw a strange figure in the distance. Atobi-sama was on guard in another direction. Hearing that, he turned back to look. Could that be a player? The human shadow did not move like a zombie, and that was why it had attracted Ming Zi's attention. As she got closer, the two of them got a closer look. It was a young woman. She had a lithe body and long hair that reached her shoulders. She had a pretty face, fair skin, a pair of eyes, a small nose, and a small mouth. She was wearing a black tuxedo, and the clothes were tight around her body, showing off her slender body. It was a great contrast to her full chest. In any case, she is definitely not wearing the default attire, Mingzi said. You have a point. Furthermore, based on her looks, she wouldn't be named Peerless General Pan Feng or Thousand Men Slayer Hua Xiong, Atobi-sama said. That Feng Bujue told us that Wang Tanji is his friend and a male player, so there shouldn't be any female players in this scenario. She doesn't look like a monster to me. Is she an NPC? Mingzi asked. Then, let's try to communicate. Atobi-sama raised the TMP in his hand and aimed at the beauty. Stop. Who are you? She did not answer but smiled. Several seconds later, the smile turned into a wicked grin, and the fangs in her mouth were exposed. Chapter 60. Team Member, Atobi-sama, dead. Team Member, names are so hard to come by, dead. The system announcement rang in his ears. Wang Tanji quickly opened the game menu to take a look. There was indeed the word dead next to the two players' names. After giving it some thought, Xiao Tan asked, Brothers, they wouldn't have died inside this building's underground lab, right? Why do you say that? Pan Feng asked without turning his head as he continued to move forward. From his tone, he didn't seem to care much about the lives of the two people. It felt like, whether the two people were dead or alive, it didn't have much of an impact on him clearing the stage. Of course, with the cooperation of Hua Xiong and him, he had the confidence to back it up. Think about it, one of them is level 14 and the other is level 12. At the very least, they are stronger than me. Even I am not afraid of the BW zombies on the street, so they won't die at the hands of those monsters. But if they also came to this Alermu building and went to the underground research center, after seeing the schematic of the ground floor. He paused before continuing, we haven't cleared that place yet, so it might be dangerous. There might even be a boss there. If they run into a zombie werewolf. You have a point, Hua Xiong said. However, from his tone, it sounded like he had already thought about that, and the point was just to brush off Xiao Tan. But since they are dead, there is nothing we can do even if we turn back now. Furthermore, we are already very close to the top floor, so we might as well clear all the way to the top and then… How about this? Xiao Tan interrupted him. Brothers, you can continue to head to the top floor, and I will return to the ground floor alone. Then, he took out the baseball bat from his inventory. Since he did not have the chance to join the battle, Xiao Tan had even put his weapon away. The remaining player is my friend. He might not have reached the building yet, but I believe he will. I will go to the ground floor to wait for him, and then I can tell him not to go down and meet up with you guys first. Pan Xiong and Hua Xiong stopped in their tracks and turned to look at him. After exchanging glances, Hua Xiong shrugged and replied, All right then. Be careful, little brother. We'll go first. Xiao Tan responded, then turned around and went back the way he came. After turning into a corridor, he rushed into the fire stairs. At the moment, he had no idea that Feng Bujue was already inside the underground lab, and he had no idea that he had misjudged the location of Atobi-sama and Ming-Yin's death. He was merely moving based on his own speculation. After he walked away, Pan Feng suddenly said in a very serious tone, "The two players were at the same coordinates for a long time before they died. That place is quite far from this building." Hua Xiong replied, "Yeah, I've been keeping an eye out for that area. There won't be any mini-bosses in that area. Before nightfall, there will only be a few BW zombies roaming the city. Furthermore, the interval between their deaths was only several seconds. Haha. Unless they jumped off the building at the same time, otherwise. So, this is the work of the anomaly," Pan Feng said darkly. "They've already made their move on the players so soon. We should move faster to prevent the other two from coming into contact with the anomaly. It's a good thing that the little brother has left. We can move freely now. After all, the way back is relatively safe, and the monsters have been cleared, so he should be fine for now," Hua Xiong said. "That player by the name of Feng Bujue is in a bad situation. Even though he still has 73% life points, the problem is that he's already infected. When he reaches the mutation stage, the player will be judged as dead, so we'd better finish this before that happens." He took a deep breath. There are only 4 players in total. The 2 who died can be forgiven, but if all 3 die before we clear the scenario, then our work will be a failure. Pan Feng nodded. You're right. We need to kill Ashford as soon as possible. Once we enter that storyline, we'll clear the scenario soon. No matter what, we need to send the players out of the scenario first, so that we can focus on dealing with the anomaly. Feng Bujue held the Winchester as he walked down the corridor of the lab. The lighting was working normally, and there were not that many zombies. Other than the one that he encountered outside the elevator, the rest of the encounters were similar to the ones on the surface. He would run into at most 1 or 2 zombies in 3 to 5 corridors. Feng Bujue's shotgun was very useful in this small corridor. He only needed to wait for the monsters to get closer before he fired. Even if he was not that good at shooting, he would be able to end the battle easily. After all, as long as he hit the limbs, they would fall to the ground. If he hit the torso, they would either fly away or be torn into pieces. He searched a relatively large area, and most of the electronic doors could be opened. Many of the rooms only had a few rows of iron shelves, and the shelves were filled with cardboard boxes. They were filled with paper documents and files. Feng Bujue naturally read some of the documents, but the content was meaningless. Most of them were the same experiment reports, and the key content of the documents had been blurred out by the black lines. Some of the rooms were equipped with large computers. The walls and tables were filled with monitors and strange joysticks and buttons. Without exception, these devices were all broken. They could not even be turned on. This kind of room was not that troublesome. He could leave after he opened the door to take a look. After a few twists and turns, Feng Bujue finally found an electronic door with a higher security level. This door required double scanning of the retina and fingerprint to open. Furthermore, game was considerate enough to arrange for a zombie in a white coat to be stationed a few meters away from the door. Feng Bujue shot the zombie in the waist. The monster was thrown to the ground and its intestines spilled out. Feng Bujue took out the baseball bat from his backpack and went over to break the bones on the zombie's arms and knees. After he was done, he switched to the kitchen knife. He pressed the zombie's face and cut off its head and one of its hands. He also searched the zombie's clothes to make sure there was nothing in his pockets before he was done. After the scan, the electronic door opened. Feng Bujue tossed the zombie's head and hand far away and stepped through the door. This was obviously a room related to the plot. On the wall facing the door, there was a huge metal gate. It looked exactly the same as the gate in a bank vault. On the left side of the wall was a row of glass tubes. They were about 1 meter tall and about 30 centimeters in diameter. They should have been filled with liquid, but now the glass casing had been shattered, and the contents had all flowed to the ground. It was a light green, translucent liquid. At that moment there was a large pool of green on the floor. The few computers in the room had lost their functions. The screens were dark and they could not be turned on. Next to one of the consoles, there were two dead bodies in white coat. Feng Bujue approached cautiously. He observed to make sure that these two were normal dead bodies and not zombies that had been hibernating for a long time. Both of them were male. One of them looked like he was in his 50s. He was bald and wore glasses. The other had gray hair and a mustache. He was a few years older. The bald man was shot in the head. The mustache man had a gunshot wound in his chest and abdomen. They did not seem to have been dragged after they died. The position and posture of the bodies indicated this. Feng Bujue replayed the situation of the shooting in his mind. The murderer should be someone they knew. He entered the laboratory through the electronic door and suddenly pulled out a gun. At a very close distance, he aimed at the bald man and pulled the trigger. The bullet entered his head and killed him. The bald man was sitting behind the console. After he died, his body slid down from the chair and fell to the ground. At the same time, the man with the mustache, who was a few steps away from the console, happened to have his back to the door. When he heard the gunshot, he turned around in shock. Unfortunately, the murderer did not give him any chance to react and immediately shot him twice. When the man with the mustache fell, his body tilted forward. Before he died, he grabbed the edge of the console with his hands to cushion his fall. Then, he fell sideways. Looking at the posture, blood, and expression of the bodies, Feng Bujue came to this conclusion. As a detective novelist, inferring the process of the crime from the scene of the crime should be a piece of cake. He did not know how many times he had deduced similar plots in his mind. Sometimes, in order to write some exquisitely arranged murders, he would do related experiments. It sounded troublesome, but after all, it was a mechanism that he racked his brain to come up with. If it was proven to be unfeasible in reality, then it would be meaningless. Ha! Feng Bujue looked at the two bodies and laughed. They are not infected. The two of them must have been injected with the serum. He looked at the dead bodies and said to himself, there are so many people in this base. Only the core researchers who directly deal with the virus all day long would have such treatment. He reorganized the process of the incident in his mind and thought, no matter what the purpose is, let's assume that the murderer is also a researcher who has been injected with the serum. He killed these two people, broke the container containing the virus stock, and then took a small amount of the liquid out of the room. He returned to the corridor and killed a few more people. Then he used the virus stock to mutate the bodies. Then he escaped from the institute and let the infection spread to the ground. But for some reason, the people on the ground all turned into another kind of zombie. Or the murderer did not escape from the institute at all. Instead, he was subdued or even killed by the guards. The virus that produced BW zombies outside the institute had nothing to do with the virus here. They were two completely different things. Feng Bujue thought of this and thought of another question. He muttered, the guy at the door also had access to this room. He should also be one of the researchers. He should have been injected with the serum, but why did he turn into a zombie? Feng Bujue needed more information and clues to understand the situation here, so he went to check the two bodies again. Then he found a key in the mustache man's pocket. There was a desk a few meters away. After Feng Bujue got the key, he walked over without hesitation and opened the drawers one by one. He found 2 syringes, a pile of white paper, some stationery, stapler, pins, post-it notes and other sundries. Only the bottom drawer was locked. He tried the key he just found and it opened. Chapter 61. There were 2 pieces of paper inside the drawer. They were obviously clues given by the system. Feng Bujue opened the first piece of paper, and there were 3 lines of hints written on it. The first line was JMMJOD, the second line was 14F, and the third line was 34F. Feng Bujue glanced at it and scoffed condescendingly. Tisk, the content on the second piece of paper was richer. It was a printed document. The words were neat, and it contained a detailed description of the virus. First, the code name of the virus was indeed Z. Since the description of the BW zombies at the start of the scenario mentioned this name, it looked like the monsters on the road and the people at the lab were infected with the same virus, but it was unclear why they would turn into different types of zombies. Secondly, the player had less than 3 hours to cure the virus after infection. The document said, within 3 hours of infection, symptoms similar to the flu will appear, such as a high fever, and in the later stage, severe dementia. This explained why Feng Bujue was covered in cold sweat and felt weak in his limbs. Obviously, the system was unable to make the player show signs of severe dementia, so when the virus started to affect the brain, the player would be judged as dead and be exited the scenario. What followed was a detailed description of the mutation of the infected, such as sporadic cell necrosis, increased oxygen storage capacity of the red blood cells, slowing blood flow, increasing muscle endurance and strength, weakening cognitive ability, and attempting to consume human flesh. Of course, there was one last thing. To completely suppress the infected, one would need to inflict severe trauma on the brain. After reading this, Feng Bujue could not help but say, "Isn't this SCP-008? But there is an antivirus serum in this scenario." When he said that, his eyes fell to the last part about the serum. The paper said, experiments show that the antivirus serum is not effective on everyone. Through 390 experiments of different genders, ages, blood types, and races, 154 people were either immune or cured of the virus after being injected with the serum. The effectiveness rate of the serum is less than 40%, and currently, there is no clear pattern to the effectiveness of the serum. After Feng Bujue finished reading the document, a bad feeling crept into his heart. With his luck, the failure rate of the antidote was self-explanatory. Even if he found the antidote, there was only a 40% chance that it could cure the disease. Or else, he would only have 2 hours left. It was impossible to clear the scenario in that amount of time. The biggest contribution he could make was to find the serum and hand it to his teammate. Speaking of teammates, 10 minutes ago, when he heard the news of Atobi-sama and Ming's death in the corridor, he understood that this scenario was not as simple as it appeared. The deaths of the two confused him. They did not look like the type to leave the gun shop on their own. Therefore, their deaths in such a short period of time were most likely due to encountering some kind of extremely powerful monster at the entrance of the gun shop. But how could a monster like that be found in the city? Even if it was nighttime and the BW zombies were strengthened, they wouldn't be able to kill 2 players with submachine guns in a few seconds. Other than that, Pan Feng and Hua Xiong, who were with Wang Tanji, gave Feng Bujue a strange feeling. From the looks of it, after the two of them led Xiao Tan into the building, they did not go to the underground lab, but somewhere else. Why was that? There was a huge signboard in the lobby of the first floor, and the main mission was clearly written that he had to save a doctor. The labels on the other floors were a mess of departments, or simply words like office area. Why would anyone go upstairs to look for it? There were too many strange situations, and temporarily there was no proof. Feng Bujue did not dwell on it. He turned to walk toward the metal door, and leaned over to look at the password on the door. Sure enough, it's a 6-digit number. He looked at the operation panel for entering the password with an, as expected, expression. He directly entered 312928. Unexpectedly, after he entered it, the word accept really popped up. Feng Bujue understood the meaning of this puzzle when he saw the piece of paper. The JMMJOD on the first line represented the first letters of January, March, May, July, August, October, and December. These months all had 31 days. The F on the second and third lines represented February, and only February had the first letter of F. The 14 represented the 29 days of February in a leap year, so naturally, the 34 represented the 28 days. For him, this kind of puzzle was not hard. He was someone who often needed to come up with puzzles. If the clue was written down on paper, as long as the knowledge required to solve the puzzle was not beyond his capability, he would be able to solve it quickly. After unlocking the door, Feng Bujue gripped the handle on the door and turned it several times before pushing the door open. It was a relatively small room. 3 of the walls were filled with transparent cupboards. The cupboards were filled with test tubes filled with liquid, and each row was labeled with a number. Picking up a test tube, the item description was revealed. Item name: Antivirus Serum. Item type: Plot. Item quality: Normal function, 39. 48% chance to nullify and neutralize the effect of virus Z. Can be taken out of the scenario, no remark. Can be injected or consumed. It is not effective on monsters or fully zombified players. Based on the serial number, Chun-Gu could tell that these serums were made in batches and the composition might be different. Feng Bujue could not help but think that perhaps this virus Z was not created by Alertmo. They were merely trying to find a way to neutralize it after they discovered it. Feng Bujue did not have time to think about the company's position. He had no idea which batch of the serums was more effective, so he grabbed a random tube from the cupboard, used the syringe that he had found earlier, and injected himself with it. When the syringe was injected, his medic mastery was unlocked, and it rose to level F. The system said, "Congratulations, you have unlocked all the masteries from the closed beta." Closed beta? Feng Bujue asked. Does this mean that there will be new masteries in the future? He opened the game menu and saw that all the masteries had been unlocked. That was a good thing, but the disease status next to his life points was still there. So it really failed. He muttered in disappointment. Should I try another needle? I wonder if there will be any side effects. Just as he was hesitating, the word disease disappeared from the menu, and the abnormal status next to his life points changed back to none. Thankfully, he did not close the menu immediately, or else he might have missed this change, and he might have gotten another shot. Feng Bujue laughed 3 times, and he felt like he had just come back from the dead. He took out a test tube rack from the freezer, and it was filled with 2 rows of 8 serums. He carefully placed them into his backpack, which was full. The 10 slots were Mario's wrench, Eye of Hostility, Western kitchen knife, baseball bat, flashlight, M1911A1 pistol, Echo armor, Winchester shotgun, antivirus serum X8, and a bag of garlic. The jazz shoes were attached to his feet, so unless they were swapped out, they would not return to his backpack. Of course, if there was a need, Feng Bujue only needed to equip the Eye of Hostility and grab a weapon to free up space in his backpack. After the serum took effect, Feng Bujue did not need to continue exploring the lab. He had come down to look for his teammates, but he did not expect to be infected once the elevator door opened. When he was first infected, he did not know when the mutation would happen, so he could only try his best to search for the serum that might not even exist. Now, since he would not die due to time, he felt like it was better for him to return to the surface to look for his teammates. Considering the fact that he had obtained the serum, he might trigger some kind of event. If he continued to explore, he might run into a mini-boss. He was already immune to the virus, so it was not worth the risk. Just as that thought crossed his mind, the system said, "Current mission completed. Main mission updated." What? Feng Bujue was shocked. Professor Ashford is really not underground? The 3 of them made the right choice by going upstairs, and they have successfully rescued the professor. He quickly opened the menu to see what the new mission was. The new mission was, defeat Professor Ashford's mutated body. Chapter 62. What kind of development is this? Feng Bujue grumbled. The professor that the mission is supposed to save is actually the villain? Several seconds later, there was a subtle change in his expression. Could Ashford be the culprit behind the poisoning? Could the truth of the plot be that after he escaped from the lab, he went to the roof of the skyscraper and used some kind of device to spread the mutated virus throughout the city? So, the virus instantly spread through the city and caused me to fail to find a single survivor? He could not help but curse. This B***starred has to be Professor Lizard. He was the only one there at the moment, and there was no surveillance equipment working near him, so the system did not stop or silence these vulgarities. Wait a minute. Feng Bujue suddenly realized something. Those two. Who are Pan Feng and Huaxiong? They went straight for the main mission once they entered the building. It's like they knew they could clear the scenario without coming to this underground lab. He pondered. Logically speaking, the plot should go like this. After the players enter the building, they will first go to the research center, find the serum, defeat a mini-boss, and then find some clues that Professor Ashford is the villain. Then, they will follow the clues and fight their way up the building. But what are these two guys up to? Are they going to expose the identity of the boss and use brute force to force it back into its original form? Xiao Tan is still alive, so I can confirm that he is working with these two. But he does not like to order people around, and he has no reason to order them to go upstairs. Furthermore, they are powerful players, so they will not listen to his orders. So, these two are moving forward based on their own will, and they are completely correct. The more Feng Bujue thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong with this scenario. He focused and calmed himself down. He took out the Winchester, loaded it, and rushed out the door. Even though the exploration was rushed, Feng Bujue remembered the route that he had taken. Furthermore, he had the dead bodies of the zombies as landmarks, so it did not take long for him to get back to the elevator. Relying on the running bonus of Jazz Dance, he was able to reach his destination at a speed that other players could only reach without consuming any stamina. 10 minutes later, Feng Bujue returned to the elevator that led to the ground floor. He had left the place in a hurry and had not cleaned up the pile of corpses in front of the elevator door, so the elevator door was still stuck. He spent more than 3 minutes dragging 7 or 8 corpses that were blocking the elevator into the corridor. Then, he took the elevator and returned to the first floor of the building. Coincidentally, he ran into Wang Tongji in the lobby. "Hey, Xiao Tan!" Feng Bujue called out to him. Xiao Tan turned around. "Brother Ju, why are you behind me?" "Cut the crap!" Feng Bujue interrupted him. As he walked forward, he took out a vial of anti-venom from his backpack and handed it to him. "Drink it." "What's this?" Xiao Tan asked as he took the anti-venom and looked at the item's attribute. "How did you get this?" "I just went to the Underground Research Institute," Feng Bujue replied. Then the other two. Before Xiao Tan could finish, Feng Bujue knew what he was going to ask. He directly replied, "They died somewhere else." The two only exchanged a few words before they rushed to the top floor of the building. Along the way, they told each other about their experiences and what they knew about the situation. Xiao Tan's description supported Feng Bujue's deduction. It made him suspect that there was something wrong with unparalleled General Pan Feng and Thousand Slayer Huaxiong. To Feng Bujue, the strength of these two was still within the acceptable range. The problem was their actions. Without collecting any clues, they went straight to the top floor to find Ashford. This was either due to amazing luck, or they had obtained information that normal players could not obtain in advance. Feng Bujue followed Xiao Tan all the way to the 51st floor. Before reaching the 47th floor, they took the same route that Xiao Tan and Pan Hua had taken. After that, Xiao Tan did not take the next 4 floors. However, based on the corpses of the monsters on the way, they could still follow the footsteps of the people before them. When they were close to the top floor, Feng Bujue asked, when you first followed them up, did you go back or come to a dead end? Xiao Tan tried to recall. No, I didn't, he then said, but the route that we're taking now is already a lot of twists and turns. We've changed a few elevators and there are a few floors that we have to cross. We've changed staircases from different places. He paused. Huh? That's not right. How would they know which floor to change staircases at? They even know the route, Feng Bujue muttered. As they spoke, they arrived at the 52nd floor. Walking down the stairs, there was a corridor in front of them. Every 10 meters in the corridor, there was a large flower pot. Directly across from them was a glass wall. Through the Audiobook logo on the glass, they could see that there was a large office space inside. This space connected the entire floor. There were many cubicles in the office space. The furnishings were very normal. There were desks and chairs, computers, water dispensers, shelves for miscellaneous items. At the end of the space were a few independent offices. From the looks of it, this floor was exactly as the map said, office space. That was it. They walked down the corridor for a while and stepped into the spacious office space through an automatic door. On this floor, they did not see any signs of blood or zombie activity. This was not a good sign. It was a sign of boss-level monster activity. Feng Bujue scanned the environment, but before he could do any investigation, he felt a tremor under his feet. There was a loud boom beside his ears, and the ceiling about 10 meters in front of him cracked open. A humanoid monster with a twisted appearance broke through the roof. The broken pieces of cement fell to the ground, and a thick cloud of dust rose from where the ceiling collapsed. Then 2 more figures jumped down from the hole. Needless to say, they were Pan Feng and Hua Xiong. In the rolling dust, the 3 figures were locked in a battle. The shadows of axes and spears crossed each other. Occasionally, there was the sound of flesh being cut open, and the ground was slowly covered in a layer of blood. This went on for about a minute. When the dust settled, the monster realized that it was not going to be able to hold on any longer. It turned around and ran toward the glass wall. Pan Feng and Hua Xiong knew that it was trying to escape. Naturally, they did not want to let it escape, or else their plan to end the scenario there would be ruined. Hua Xiong leaned to the monster's side. With a spin and a push, the spearhead was aimed at the monster's head. The body of the spear morphed into a blur as it shot forward. Pan Feng's weapon was heavier, so his speed was slower. He had no choice but to take a step forward to get close to his target. The mountain-splitting axe was aimed at the monster's back. The two were relentless in their pursuit, forcing Ashford's mutant into a corner. To escape, it was willing to take the hit from the spear. The spearhead pierced through the monster's left eye socket and came out from the back of its head, bringing with it a splash of dirty liquid. However, this kind of injury was not enough to kill the mutant. By curling its body forward to take the hit, it successfully escaped Pan Feng's attack and came to the edge of the glass wall. Then, it used the serrated bone that protruded from its elbow to slam into the thick glass. After creating a crack, its body curled into a ball and flew out of the building. Pan Feng and Hua Xiong rushed to the edge of the wall and lowered their heads to look at the mutant's rapidly falling body. After falling for a distance, the mutant used the suction cups and sticky liquid on its body to cling to the wall. Then, it slithered to the ground and escaped from their sight. TSK. It still managed to escape, Pan Feng said. As I expected, without the accompaniment of other players, the two of us attacking the boss directly will cause its intelligence and reaction speed to change, Hua Xiong replied. Gentlemen. Feng Bujue's voice came from behind them, and it shocked the two. They turned around and saw Feng Bujue, who was looking at them with hostility, and Wang Tongji, who was confused. Can you explain to me? Feng Bujue asked directly, who are you people? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.